Let's get ready to RPG!
RPG! RPG! RPG! RPG! RPG!
Hello and good evening. Welcome to the Knights of Last Call. My name is Derek Melinda, and I am very happy to be with you here tonight. I think I got hooked. You think you got hooked? I think I got hooked, okay? This is part of our ongoing series that we call RPG First Look, where I engage with a new game that I have never, I might have owned it. In some cases, I've just never actually read it. But in most cases, it is a game that I have not ever read or seen. I may have heard of it, but I've never owned it. I've never seen it. So usually it's something that if you're a member of our Knights of Last Call Patreon community, there are some polls and votes, and they usually get to kind of pick in the direction that we go with these first looks. So it's kind of an interesting opportunity for me to take a look at games that people are interested in. That's the premise of RPG First Look. So the reason I say that I might have gotten hooked, and to be fair, if you're not a regular viewer, welcome. I apologize for the clickbaity thumbnail. It was part of a meme and a little bit of trolling on behalf of my patrons. Because we had a first look poll the other day, and we had a first look poll last night for what should be the game that we handle today for right now. And there was a lot of great choices, the kind of stuff, quite frankly, that you would expect to see on this kind of channel. Wild Sea, Heart, Ryutama, Dragonbane, Earth Dawn, Trophy Dark, right? These are the kind of typical games that we would normally cover on this channel. Instead, somehow, a game that goes by the name of Fateforge won. Now, I know nothing about this game. Other than that, apparently, it is 5th edition. It's a kind of a 5e clone, I guess would be the way I would describe it. Now, that in of itself isn't really that impressive. There's a ton of those things out there. But what is impressive, apparently, is that we have a it's one of our senior moderators, been with our community a very, very long time. He's been on the channel a number of times, especially when we talk about horror or Call of Cthulhu. And that, of course, is Ben A. And Ben apparently saw or picked up this book when he was at PAX Unplugged the other week and was kind of raving about it a little bit in the Discord, as one does in the Patreon Discord. And people were shocked. Ben has basically completely forswore all D20 games. No Pathfinder, no Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition, no 3rd edition. He will play 1st edition to AD&D, but like in sort of modern D20, he's just completely disavowed it. And here he was talking up apparently some game. Now I saw him talking it up, but I knew nothing about it. I just saw Fateforge. I thought, okay, maybe it's a game about my first go-to is some sort of medieval peasantry, because that typically is the kind of game that Ben really gets into. Maybe small creatures it's a solo journaling game. But no, instead, I came to learn that this is basically a 5e clone. And that really surprises me. And so as part of the joke that this thing won, my patrons voted for it, was, we were saying, oh shit, Derek's going to be actually covering 5th edition D&D. Because if you're a fan of this channel or you're new, then you'll know that I don't usually cover 5th edition D&D. And so it was kind of a joke that, we'll make a really, clickbaity thumbnail to try to play it up. Anyways, so that's why I say I think I've been hooked, because I don't know if this was a troll on behalf of my patrons. I mean, we are part of this community. I exist as a channel because they exist as a community. So, if they want to see me talk about some 5e game that got made a couple years ago, apparently won a couple Ennies, not gold, but silver, then we will do that. This also might be an interesting thing to talk a little bit. Just, we don't get a chance to usually talk about 5th edition on this channel. And so, this might be an interesting opportunity because I have run 5th edition, not many times. I mean, considering that the game is almost 10 years old at this point, I've only played in one high level 5th edition campaign. I've never GM'd anything past level 10, and most of the times I have just GM'd, campaigns that lasted 2 to 3, 4 months, and basically got through the first, 5 levels or so, 6 levels or so. And most of the time, those have just been pretty standard, classic kind of dungeon crawling type games. But this is an opportunity for us to talk about 5th edition a little bit, under the context of Fateforge, epic tales in the world of Eana. You'll have to tell me how you would pronounce it. Anyways, it's not really. So Pepper asking the great questions. The question is the clickbait true though? I don't know. Maybe it is. I know a lot of people have problems with 5th edition D&D. Maybe we can even talk about some of those here tonight as well. And about why it is. And ironically, why I don't play 5th edition D&D. It's not part of my regular routine. I own, there we go. Right there. I own some of the books, but I don't own all of the books. I own the core. I think I own Xanathar's Guide to Everything, a couple of the adventures. So I'm not really an expert to tell you if Fateforge is the answer to D&D 5th edition, but I understand that people have problems with the game. So, hey, Jonka starting us off starting us off right.
Honka tipped $5. Dragonbane might be an interesting game to review as well.
Yeah, so I believe, Jonka, that Dragonbane will probably make the cut for our first look. Remember, we had a big tip goal Tuesday, which was to do a holiday stream extravaganza. And so the week between Christmas and New Year's, I'm pretty much going to stream every day. Bob from Knights of the Last Call has said that he wants to run some Dragonbane games, possibly run some ticket games for our patrons over on the Discord. So we will probably cover Dragonbane, I think so. And again, people that I really respect, like GM Scott, say that it's one of their go-to games now, and for like beer and pretzel, just kind of quick, fun style gaming. And so it's worth taking a look. The Darkwing Duck thing kind of threw me off a little bit, but whatever. It is what it is. That is you. That is you. Let's see. Who do we got here tonight? We've got Beowulf is in the house. London is here with the Vibe O'Clock. Speak of GM Scott, he's here. Pumpkin, what is up? James Glass, hello, hello. Cloud, hello. Oh, Paladin Actual, welcome. Kyle has zero knowledge of Fateforge, so I'm interested to see how this goes. Yeah, me too. I almost have zero knowledge of 5th edition D&D, so this is kind of like a double whammy. Damien with a $5 super chat. Since when does us telling you how to pronounce something change things? Iomade. That is how I pronounced for like 6, 7, 8 years of Pathfinder 1. How long? Pathfinder 1 came out in 2009. We were still playing 4th edition then. So we started playing Pathfinder 1 around 2012. So for the better part of 10 years, I pronounced it Iomade. So it's hard. And I had a paladin. Okay, let me tell you something. Okay, my paladin with Elbion was a very loyal servant of Iomade. Or Iomididi or Iomedetetuta. Okay. But yes. Hi, Ken. How's it going? Lugs says, so you don't play any 5e? No, not really, Lugs. My experience with it is, we were, after 4th edition, had kind of run its course. We were playing Pathfinder 1 a lot. And 5th edition was I was big into the convention scene. I got a chance to play test it and demo it. It seemed I was disappointed in it, to be honest with you, because I liked 4th edition D&D, and 5th edition D&D seemed to me like a shadow of an edition. It clearly was calling back to 3rd edition, maybe even 2nd edition D&D. I think it was really trying to bring people back into the into the RPG hobby that had been pushed out by 4E. 4E, obviously, I think is a fantastically designed game, but there can be no doubt that it was a big change graphically, it was a big change thematically, tonally. It was a big change. Whoa. Welcome, Janka. Welcome to. Let's see what we got for Janka here. That is going to be a new member. Oh, new member. Janka. Well, thank you, Janka. Appreciate that. I didn't even see the new member symbol there, so I thought it was a re-up. All right, Janka, thank you. Thank you for joining. Enjoy the emojis and enjoy the loyalty badge. Appreciate it. Don't forget, I think you get some sort of, I think once a month you get a special member shout out. Ask Damien in chat if you have any questions about it. But thank you, Janka. I appreciate that support. That is awesome. Yeah, so anyways, 5th edition, it came out. We were like, all right, let's play it. So we made some characters and we started some, kind of generic dungeon stuff. And it was fine. It didn't feel particularly complex. It felt familiar. The tropes felt familiar. Very quickly we kind of determined that like some feats were really good, and it was kind of weird because it was like, are feats core or are they optional? I'm not really sure what's going on here. So we weren't really quite sure about that, but it was fine. It was whatever. But we got bored with it really quickly. And we just said, let's go play other games. So we played 13th Age and Back to Pathfinder and, a handful of other RPGs that we had obviously in our belt pouches. I even think Smith ran another 4E campaign. So yeah, like we just found it like, I was like, I already played this game kind of to a certain extent. I played it when it was called, to me, it was like BX D&D plus 3rd edition D&D with some mechanics from 4E, but with like all the serial numbers scraped off of it so that you wouldn't actually think it was from 4th edition. But yeah. And then, like I said, I played it a couple of times. I ran games a couple of times for, Heyo, Cloud. Hello.
Claude Corp tip $3 just for fun. Someday would you consider doing kind of a Project Frankenstein where you take your favorite systems from many games and put them together to create a game? Would be a mess for sure, but interesting emo.
I mean, traditionally, I'm very against that kind of behavior, Cloud. We could talk about some of my favorite mechanics. I just don't know that they would all, I don't even think you could even pretend to put them into a game. A hack, as people say. And again, I think people use that term hack far too, cavalier attitude. I mean, you still have to put, you can't just literally duct tape another subsystem from a different game onto another, game and just call it good. You do have to do some amount of work to integrate, but I don't know, Cloud. We'd have to be pretty deep in the tank, in terms of maybe it's one of those holiday streams when we start running out of things to talk about. Yeah, that's the Bob approach to things. Yes. So yeah, all right. Well, we're here. Let's get into it. 10 hacks deep is definitely not far enough. All right, so again, first time I'm ever actually looking at this game, so we'll get into it. Now, for those of you who have never been and been part of these streams, my goal is I'm not trying to teach you the game. I'm just trying to get a feel for it. We may not cover every system. We may not cover every element. It's not a review of the game. Obviously, I've not even finished reading it. It's my first time reading it, and I certainly haven't played it. By the way, I do think, I don't know, I think there was like a debate going on like in the Twitter sphere about whether you should be able to review a game if you haven't played it. And my answer is no. I think you have to play a game. I think you have to play it. You cannot just read it. You can read it and you can give your thoughts on it, but if it's like a whole new game, I don't think you should really be talking about it like a review, because to me, that's like the difference between like, I know what a movie's about and I'm going to tell you about why I think that might not be a good movie or why I think that might be a great movie versus having never seen the movie and actually reviewing it. So that's kind of where I'm going with that. Is this new? Was it a Kickstarter? No, this game is from 2019, KC. So this is actually a couple of years old. Came out probably right before the pandemic hit. So, maybe it just got swept under the rug there. I don't know. We'll kind of get into it. Chase coming in with a $10 super chat. Kefka laughs. Chase says 5E's fatal flaw, in my opinion, is that Wizards of the Coast can't both simultaneously balance the game for min-maxers, new players, and the DM. Everything falls apart at levels 6 through 10. I hope Fateforge is an improvement. Chase, we'll see. I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of things that I think I want to parse about that section real quick. Number one is, you're absolutely correct, in the sense that I think as soon as you have balance as one of your core design goals, that radically changes how the game has to be structured and made. Now, I have talked on this channel about how I find myself frustrated by the tight restrictions of the Pathfinder 2 system. But that is because the Pathfinder 2 system is a balanced system. It is not perfectly balanced. Nothing is. But when you balance a game, that you got to put lane markers and guardrails and speed limits and traffic stops and, traffic lights and speed traps. And you know what I mean? Like, you have to put a lot of restrictions on the game. You have to control the play space a lot, because if you allow too much leeway, the game becomes unbalanced. And as a result, the game could potentially, if that's a design goal for you. And then another problem, which you're going to talk about here, which I think is a wider problem in the TTRPG hobby in general. People buy these games and they're going to play them for 6 years, 7 years, 8 years. But so many of these games and systems are aimed at, and I think held back by, the need for it to be an introductory experience. And that's great and all for the first time that you're playing the game. Now, to contrast this, Legend of the Five Rings over here is a very complicated game. And I think picking that game up and trying to play it for the first time, if you're not a very seasoned RPG player, would be very difficult. But they have a box set. And this box set is an introductory adventure with pre-generated characters. It doesn't even have all of the rules. It has the idea of some of the rules, and it presents them in a very stepwise fashion. Press start. Now, Fabula Ultima is not a particularly difficult or complicated game, but still, press start is a fantastic introductory experience with pre-generated characters and an adventure structure that slowly introduces the concepts of the game, while not fully giving you everything from the fire hose. As a result, I think those are far better ways for the game. I think that the actual hardback book, the hardcover book, should almost not be aimed at the new player. In fact, almost to the point where it's like, hey, are you new to the game? Don't buy this. Go buy this starter set or this box set first. But of course, that's horrible for your bottom line if you're trying to sell books. But I do think books pay the price for that. So that is something that I will do. All right. Fateforge, epic tales in the world of, you give me your pronunciations in chat. Eana, Eana, you tell me. Well, the art's really cool. So there's that. Let's see, it's coming out of Studio Agate, which I've never heard of. And it is based on the original ideas of Joël Deschamps and Nilehan. No idea who any of these people are. They sound European, so I'm assuming that's where they're coming from. All right. So here we are, our table of contents. Now, before we'll get into this too much here. Kutras, what is my preferred PDF reader? That would be Sumatra PDF. Sumatra. French game. Oui, oui. If you want to see a really good French accent, go watch Root. All right. Let's see here. London Matthews says it is Eana. I can't even say it. Eana. Eana. All right. So we've got forward introduction to role-playing games, of course. This is interesting. This is already jumping out at me. It says page 11 has what they are calling the modular system. So that is interesting. That does kind of stand out to me. Then we have a character creation section, part 1, where we choose our civilization, our species, our background, our class. That sounds fairly common to a D20 game. Step 5, however, is determine whether or not they have awakened to magic. So that we should keep our eyes out for that. Then we determine their ability scores. Note that we are choosing our class and our background and our species before we determine our ability scores. So, I know that technically 5th edition, I think it's like you can roll or point by, but you would kind of typically do that first. So this is coming later. We choose their equipment. We take note of their skills. We describe them, and we choose their alignment. Continuing with this character creation, we have, of course, the world of Eana. And we get about its moons and all its history and a bunch of its civilizations and a bunch of world building stuff. Okay. Then we get to our species where we get details about them. We've got most of your standard stuff here, gnomes, elves, dwarves, but we have the dwarves have a special name, and the half-elves have a special name, and the half-orcs have a special name. So far, nothing really jumping out at me here. For our history, our character's history, we have background. We identify what our skill proficiencies will be, equipment. We've got some ready-made backgrounds. Then we got our classes. We've got barbarian, bard, cleric, druid, fighter, monk, paladin, ranger, rogue, scholar. That's new. Sorcerer, warlock, wizard. So sounding fairly common to D20, although the scholar sounds like a new class, although I could have missed something. 5 pages on languages. All right. Then we get customization options. We get some feats. So it looks like they have their own list of feats. We've got multi-classing rules. Then we've got information about life in this town. How much does a horse cost? Basically what I like to call the tip of the hat to verisimilitude and simulationism. All this stuff here, trade, lifestyle, resources, services. This is all shit for simulationism. And then we get, what else do we get? There we go. Equipment, armor, weapons, the like. Then on page 331, we get to the game rules. I see strength, dex, con, int, whiz, charisma, movement, falling, suffocating, falling food and water from the environment, also known as a tip of the hat to simulationism. Resting, short rest, combat, and then health, healing, wounds. Okay. So that sounds a little different than what I'm used to for D&D 5e. And then appendices about conditions and technical glossaries. So what I'm going to do first is I am going to pop over to the character sheet, because a lot of times, especially with like D20 types games, character sheets are a great place to start. And as we kind of get into this, one of the things, again, that I'm always trying to judge for is, and this is actually a criticism of 5th edition or games like it, is, there's a lot of games out there, right? So much so that a generic game doesn't really, in my opinion, appeal to me. Why would I play something generic when I could play something that is specially made for what I want to do? Now, of course, there are downsides to that. You have to buy the role-playing game. You have to find the role-playing game first. Channels like Knights of the Last Call help with that. And then you have to buy it. Then you have to read it. Then you have to get a group of players who also will buy it and read it. So I get it. There are real practical hurdles to getting everybody to play a game. But let me tell you something. If you have a group that will do that, it's fucking sweet. So my heart goes out to all of you people out there who are just stuck with a group who go, well, I won't play anything but Pathfinder, or I won't play anything but 5th edition. All right, so let's take a look at the character sheet. We've got name, class, species, experience, civilization. I don't know if that has a mechanical effect, but this looks all pretty standard to D20 fantasy. We have an inspiration, yes or no, so 5th edition. Hit points, hit dice, okay. Temp, HP, max HP, wound threshold. So this is the only thing here that looks new to me. We've got 6 ability scores, strength, dex, con, int, whiz, charisma. And we've got whether you're proficient, I'm guessing, or not proficient. And it looks like we have 2 dots for both proficiency and expertise. If I say something wrong in 5th editionese, let me know. But I think that's what I have there. Initiative, armor classes, any conditions. We've got the 6 tiers of exhaustion, which looks like it's fairly common. We've got 3 death saves, 3 failures, 3 successes. We've got ammunition because we want to track that. And then at the bottom, we have some notes on what we can do with our actions. We can attack. We can cast a spell. We can dash. We can disengage. We can dodge. We can help. We can hide. We can incite. That's a new action, incite. We can ready. We can search. We can use an object. And as a bonus action, we can 2-weapon attack. And as a reaction, we can use our opportunity attack or attack of opportunity. I will say, but without going to the second page here, I like this character sheet, although it's a little, I don't know, it's a little underwhelming. It's a little bland, but it does seem very, very laid out well. I like the skills and the saving throws all under one, under the attribute that they come from. I think that's a nice little touch there. I like that, you know, it has the rules text for exhaustion. Maybe exhaustion is really important in this game. I don't know. I even like that they have all the actions that you can do right here on the front of the sheet. So that is kind of a nice little touch to it. Then on the second page, we have our resistances, our immunities, and we have our features. So we have our armor, weapons, and then basically it tells us what can we use in unlimited times per day, what can we do on a short rest, what can we do on a long rest, and then we have our spell slots, apparently, if we have them. Then on page 3, we have this whole section about your character, including a section on corruption, madnesses, handicaps, and then the flaw, bond, alignment, ideal that we're used to getting from fifth edition. Along with this whole thing of soul and being awakened. So that might be something very specific, obviously, to this game. I will say that I like this a lot. This is a nice, clean sheet. I like that it breaks up the whether it's regained in a short rest or a long rest. Damian Williams coming in with $2. Tell me about it. How many super games did I read? Exactly, Damian. Like all of them. You read all of them. And it takes, you know, it's an investment. It's an investment in time and it's an investment in money. I get it. You know, trying to build out a new game or trying to get a new game to the table could be a lot of effort, a lot of work. So again, interesting here. We see that there's definitely there's something more going on here. It might just be fluffy bullshit. I don't understand. You know, it might not be, but we'll see. Then we have our possessions. Again, I like the way that this is phrased. Although, man, look at a lot of the graphics. A lot of graphics on the character sheet here. This is a little bit too much for me. Equipment within arm's reach, purse, treasure, and barter, and at the bottom of the bag on a mount, etc. So I like the idea of like, this is the equipment I can use, and this is the equipment that is, you know, going to require some effort to get out. And then our spell book. And again, this is me being like, oh yeah, that's the way 5th edition works. Like you have a bunch of spells and then you could prepare any number of them. And then you use your slots to actually cast them at whatever level you want to cast them at. Which I get some people really like that system. I think it's okay. I played a bard when I played 5th edition all the way up to 20th level. It was okay. I didn't hate it, you know? Yeah, so overall, it kind of looks like 5th edition. So, you know, we can, you know, we can talk about that. It's actually, again, we'll talk about 5th edition here as well. But the tension between long rest, short rest, and adventuring is something that I absolutely love. I think that the games don't do a good job of utilizing it, but this is part of the reason why I like Torchbearer. We talked about Torchbearer not that long ago, and you could think of going back to town and, recovering all your conditions and statuses as being like the equivalent of a long rest, and camp scenes in Torchbearer are like short rests. In fact, that play pattern has really dominated a lot of the design, certainly that Aaron has done, but even me, like when I did Dungeon Time Extreme, which was my last 5e campaign that I ran, where I hacked the hell out of the game, but by that I mean like hacked it with a machete, not with a surgeon's scalpel. But I like the play pattern of resting being part of the game. And I think it's bad because I think a lot of people don't play the game in a way that resting matters. If you're playing a very narrative, plot-based game, story-based game, I think it could be really, really problematic because the game is set up, I think, to work on these resource exchanges, and the game itself kind of ignores them, and then the way that people play ignores them. So it can be very, very frustrating. You know, the classic example, of course, is the 15-minute adventuring day. And there are very few games that have really done anything to combat that or stop that. 13th Age is one of them that actually does it. If you play with the no 4-encounter full heal up. So, in 13th Age, which is a D20 game, when you get your long rest is not physically when you slept for 8 hours, right? The game requires basically that you go through 4 encounters before you're able to, take a long rest and recover your hit points and your abilities. It doesn't yet matter if those 4 encounters take place over the course of days or weeks. You have to get through 4 encounters, then you get a long rest. So that allows the game to be a little bit more interesting, a little bit more tactical. But of course, people say, but that doesn't feel very simulationist. Like I should get my stuff back when I rest. And it's kind of like, well, should you? I mean, why is that? I don't, we're just so bought into these, ideas. All right. Forward. All right. Dear reader, you hold in your hands Adventurers, the core rulebook of this game. It has been designed with 2 rulebooks, Adventurers and Grimoire, which are intended that's a word. Diptyche? I'll be honest with you. I don't know that word. Let's take a look. I don't actually know what that word is. A diptych. A painting, especially on an altarpiece, on 2 hinged wooden panels that may be closed like a book. Oh, I've seen those before. Okay, a diptych. All right. So that is quite the term to use. Anyways, so you've got basically a book. We got our core rule book. We've got a spell book, and then there's 2 books for the leaders, which is what I think they're using here for Dungeon Master, which is the Encyclopedia, and the creatures. All right, so Grimoire goes into the rules for magic and lists the spells available to those who have experienced the awakening. And then Encyclopedia sounds like it's a bunch of splat and stuff, and creatures is a monster manual. Okay. Introduction to role-playing games. Of course, we know this. Again, it's very busy design here. There's a lot of margin stuff, but I'm just kind of scrolling around here. But I mean, it's pretty. I like this style of art. We'll see if it gets annoying. All right, here we go. So, you've got an attack roll. Nothing new here. Nothing super important here. The game uses advantages and disadvantages. Let's see here. Saving throws, ability checks. Yep, roll d20, roll high. Okay, so absolutely standard, normal stuff here. So this is the example of a scene. Looks like it's very, classic. It's funny too, because it's like, everybody does this. And then what do they show? They show people exploring a dungeon. And then nobody ever does that anymore. It's a shame. All right, here we go. The modular system. Damien says, gee, I wonder why Ben likes this game. I don't know. I actually cannot figure it out yet. So the modular system. So this is the only thing that I saw that was really tacitly different. Fateforge makes use of a modular system that lets each leader, that's Dungeon Master, define the atmosphere they wish to create for their stories through 5 categories. Now, I listen, I know that language, it just doesn't mean anything, but I got to be honest with you. for me, having read so many Powered by the Apocalypse games and Forged in the Dark games, I absolutely cannot stand language like this. It bothers me so much, and lets each leader define the atmosphere they wish to create for their stories through like that level of grasping control is so unappealing to me. It speaks of DM authorship, and I can't stand. I know that it's just some random throwaway line, but I'm just telling you, like, what's my experience as I read this book? This is the type of stuff that really pops up. And when I read a book, what do you notice? What do I notice? I notice that, and that really bothers me. Action, dark, gritty, intrigue, and mystery. Each of the symbols listed below indicates related optional rules. In addition to these symbols, others are included throughout the book: awakening, dragon, and elusive magic. These cover a variety of optional playstyles and variant game mechanics. So, it sounds like the way that this game is structured, you have these various, I guess you would say, optional rule systems that you could place into your game, and the symbol will tell you whether it's part of that rule set or not. So if you want to use the dark rule set, you would use the rules and the options that have this kind of Eye of Sauron looking thing. And if you want something that is gritty, for a harsher, more realistic gameplay where nothing is easy for the PCs, then you would use the blood. The action is for that. And of course, then you have people like a lot of our Knights of Last Call Patreon members who would go, yeah, I'm going to use all 5. I'm going to use, my game is the action, dark, gritty, intrigue, mystery game. Wait a second. How can it be action, gritty, intrigue? Oh, dude, it's fine. It's fine. I just use all the rules. I also hacked in some Blades in the Dark. So interestingly, this is this thing, awakening thing that we've heard about. So that's different because there's the themes, right? Which is action, dark, gritty, intrigue, mystery. Awakening with this little kind of opening eye symbol. Whatever your character's class is, in order to be able to call upon their spells and magical abilities, they must have experienced the awakening. So that you can spot them easily, all powers and abilities related to the awakening are preceded by this icon. Interesting. So this would imply that you do not start with magic in this game, or that magic is almost more like Wheel of Time, right? Where it's like you have to experience sort of like an awakening, or find that you can actually use magic. It's very interesting. I wonder if they did that for like flavor purposes, or if this is like an attempt to balance casters versus marshals from a 5th edition perspective. I don't know. Meanwhile, we had the other one, which is elusive magic. If the leader, and again, remember that means dungeon master or game master, if the leader makes use of this optional rule, the players will not get, the players will not get to handpick their spells through creation and evolution of their characters. Learning new powers may require finding a mentor. So elusive magic basically means you're playing D&D like it's 1980 or 1979, and you're basically getting randomly generated spells. Or when you level up, you don't even get new spells. You have to go find them, or you have to go train or learn with someone. You don't just get to pick them out of a book, whichever ones you want. Trust me, many 1970s D&D wizards started the game off with, their only spells were Tensor's Floating Disc, Animate Rope, and Charm Person. And let me tell you something. You have a very different game experience when those are your spells versus, Sleep, Magic Missile, and Color Spray. Anyways. Dragon. This last icon is not actually part of the modular system. Then don't put it in the modular system. It is there to highlight particularly important information that should not be skipped. Save Versus says, so no awakening / elusive magic campaigns. I don't necessarily know that. Again, I don't want to speak for the game itself, but I could imagine a world. Actually, to me, I feel like those two things should go hand in hand, right? If you have characters who have to basically awaken to their magic, otherwise they don't have it, and then the magic you do get isn't some customized thing that you can just pick whatever you want out of the book, but instead is maybe randomly generated, or maybe the GM generates it. That to me feels kind of still part of that kind of part of that awakening vibe. So I actually think if I was going to use awakening, I would want to use elusive magic for sure. So I mean, I think that's kind of where it's kind of interesting. Let's see here. Just reading the chat here. Absolutely. Awakening, gritty, elusive magic, throw in mystery and intrigue. Right. So then you're just playing with all of them. All right, here we go. So cool art, character creation. Yep. All right. We choose our civilization. So basically where you're from. So there are 18 cultures on the world of Eana. Their particularities of their lifestyles. See the dedicated chapter, World of Eana. Strictly speaking, this will only determine your languages. Okay, so it is basically mostly fluffy bullshit time, but that's okay. I like that they've decided to name their character Ted. What a horrible, horrible name. So Zoe is creating a character named Ted, which is terrible. If you've ever named a character Ted, what is wrong with you? So then we choose a species, which is basically halfling, human, elf, all the normal stuff here. So nothing special there. Then we get to our class. 13 classes, each with their own variants. The name tells you what they do. Okay. Let's see. The focus on, basic normal stuff here. Okay. So normal class stuff information. We got proficiency bonus, which is added to attack rolls, ability checks if you're proficient, saving throws if you're proficient, and difficulty class if you're a spellcaster. All right. So step 5. This is a new one. Did I skip one? Right. Step 1 was choose a civilization. Oh, he's right. We have to choose a background. I skipped choose a background. Not all dwarven clerics will have the same history. Fateforge lets you tailor make your character's background, but if you're in a hurry and would rather follow ready-made examples, there are 10 predefined backgrounds. So this sounds just like 5th edition's backgrounds because it looks like it's granting you a number of proficiencies in school skills or tools, additional languages, and a particular talent that you can make use of, which is pretty much, I think, what 5th edition's background system is. As an aside, again, we're going through this. It feels like it's kind of like 5th edition with maybe some cool optional rules, which is, I think, what we're going to get into. But I just want to say I absolutely hate 5th edition and Pathfinder 2's background system. I think that they are horrible and they are boring. I don't care about your character being a cobbler growing up, and it's weird and strange. Like I want to, like, for me, characters are much cooler when they actually have cool backgrounds. Like, before I became an adventurer, I was part of I was an imperial assassin for the Eagle Emperor of the North. That's a cool background. Okay, we can have fun with that. You could see how that could lead to different adventures. You could see how that could lead to really cool, ideas for your character and your power. But like, my character was a boatswain. It's like, come on. It's so boring and it's so uninteresting, and I just don't care. That's the thing. Yeah, maybe you were those things. I don't care. Just scribble it down on your character sheet. It shouldn't be mechanicalized, Now, Benjamin brings up an interesting point. You want to say a level 1 Pathfinder rogue has a past career as a royal assassin? Benjamin, yes, but that also goes to another problem of mine, which is I don't, unless I'm specifically playing a game like basic expert D&D, very basic game. I don't want to play a scrub, right? I want to play a hero. I want to start the game off with bosun. Sorry. Yes, bosun. Thank you. I said boatswain, yes, bosun. Yeah, so like I don't want to start off as just a basically a peasant with a dagger. I just don't find that interesting. I mean, maybe if I want to, again, if I'm playing some sort of, brutal, harsh, kind of game, like that's the theme. But if the theme of the game, which it says it is your big damn heroes, your adventurers, you're the whatever. And then, you start off and you're like playing a game and you're like, I'm just a scrub and I can get killed in one hit. That to me is a failure of the mechanics to properly align with what it is that you are trying to actually do here. So anyways, long story short is, I think low levels in these games are problematic because they're designed for people who are playing the game for the very first time. There is no one out there. There is absolutely no one out there who can tell me that who've played D&D 5th edition for years, who have played Pathfinder 2nd edition for years, finds themselves thrilled and having fun with a first level character. They're just very, very boring. And there's just not enough stuff to do and not enough stuff to keep you interested. And it's like, I'm here to, engage and play. And like, why do I have to wait? Why do I have to wait to have fun? I'm not a big fan of that, Let's see. Ian James says naval terms are almost always tediously unintuitive to pronounce. Yes. Which again, I sail. So I was that's actually funny that I didn't really know how to pronounce. I've heard the term bosun, bosun's mate many times. I never really put two and two together that it was spelled boatswain, but yes, Bolin knot would be another one where you're like, oh, the spelling and how you pronounce that are very, very, very different. Let's see here. All right, well, that's not bad, Pierre. Thank you. Well then, all right, I'll take my credit, but I mean, I probably did say it right. All right, so we got our background. And we choose our class, proficiency bonus. Okay, here we go. Determine whether or not they have awakened to magic. In Fateforge's universe, some individuals experience what sages call the awakening, thus becoming attuned to the tides of magic. Is it a gift? The influence of the moon eternity, which dictates the fate of heroes, holy favor from the gods. Theories abound, and the mystery remains. At creation, your character has not necessarily awakened. A non-awakened character is said to be dormant. Ask the game master what they have decided for their campaign. Okay, so this is like an optional choice. They can either decide your character's connection with magic from the list below, or roll a d20 and determine it randomly. On a 1 to 9, you are dormant. You are not awakened yet, but maybe it will happen someday. At 10 to 15, you are close to awakening. You might awaken over the course of the first few adventures. And then if you roll a 16 or 20, you are awakened. At creation, your character has already awakened to magic. Determine when and how this happened. Is it a gift from birth? Did they experience something extraordinary that triggered their awakening? An awakened character is able to use magic. If they have chosen a spellcasting class, they can cast spells. Now, here's what's interesting. Step 4 was choose your class. And then step 5 is determine whether or not you have access to magic. So if I'm reading this correctly, I could pick a wizard or a sorcerer and then roll on this and get dormant, which means I don't have access to spells. What? This is it's a little unusual. Okay. All right, here we go. Isaiah says, look under theory and practice. Let's take a look at theory and practice. Theory and practice. If for some reason or another, your character has not yet awakened at creation, but you still want to play a class with magical powers, wizard, cleric, paladin, your character will still learn them as they progress, but they will not be able to make use of them. Okay, so get fucked. Your character is considered to be dormant. Magic in Eana is like music. Your character may know all about musical theory, but still be unable to play any instrument. Brutal. One day they may awaken and become able to use all the powers they have access to, thus fully realizing their potential. In game terms, a dormant character cannot make use of powers whose description come with the awakening stamp. So no, yeah, you are worse, I think, than a first edition wizard, because even a first edition wizard got 1 spell per day. So Isaiah says, if my GM did that to me, I would legit just quit the game. Like, what the fuck? By the way, my favorite part about this, Isaiah, is you can roll randomly. But the other thing is it says, ask the leader what they have decided for their campaign. They can either decide your character's connection with the list below. So it could just be a decision. The game master goes, I have decided that your character is not awakened. You are dormant. So okay, let's take a step back off the cliff here. London says, who is this for? So I'll tell you who it's for. What it's for is the fact that especially in 5th edition, but especially in 5th edition, assuming it's anything like 5th edition, magic is very, very, very powerful. Okay. And in my general experience, in the old days of yore, okay, when you used to play D&D, you only had 1 spell per day as a wizard. So let's be clear. You basically had no spells, right? Like the difference between having like, oh, I've got 2-3 spells and I've got unlimited cantrips. I've got 5 cantrips and 3 spells versus you just have 1 spell per day and versus 0. It's pretty much the same. As someone pointed out rightfully, clerics in original D&D did not get spells at 1st level. They got them at 2nd level. Wizards in D&D had D4 hit points. Okay? Wizards in D&D could not wear armor at all. In modern D20 terms, a wizard would roll randomly a D4 hit points. Let's call it 2. Let's be generous and call it 3. And their AC would be 10. Maybe 11. That's it. They have 1 spell a day. And they suck. Why would anyone but wizards have clearly been a force in D20 gaming going back to the 1970s. Why is that? Because the idea is if you stick it out, that the power that you gain feels earned and maybe even feels like deserved. When you remember that you're the guy playing the wizard has basically been a glass, not a glass cannon, just glass for months of playing the game. When they suddenly gain the ability to cast fireballs and instant death spells, maybe you feel like, you know what? It's your time to shine, buddy. So I think there is something to be said about that style of play. I get that it doesn't bake into the modern day context of like, I want to make my special character. I want to play Path Builder. I have my idea of who my character is from level 1 to 20. I have an arc pre-written. I have all the mechanics chosen. I know what feat I'm taking at 4 and 8 and 12. And I'm pretty much expecting to get these magical items at 3 and 6 and 9 and 14, right? That is one way of playing the game, and one way that I think is fairly common these days. And another way of playing the game is, play to find out what happens. I mean, I think that's part of the reason why some people really have a hard time going to PBTA, because one of the big, agendas of Powered by the Apocalypse games is play to find out what happens. You don't know what's going to happen. You don't know what's going to happen with your character. You don't know what's going to happen with your campaign. And that uncertainty can be very, kind of disturbing. Anyways, Damien also points out a good point. At first level, your wizard isn't that worse as a fighter, right? They can hit. They can hit. I mean, it's not great. You're not powerful, but again, maybe it's a way to balance it. Maybe it's just a way to bring in a lot of flavor. I mean, again, we've had very lengthy discussions on the Knights of Last Call community board about how flavorless and also the implication of a magic in a D&D or Pathfinder style game, where you have 15 to 20% of the populace able to use magic at some level, where magic is infinite. It costs no resources. It costs no corruption of the soul. You don't even have to eat metal or anything like that, right? You just wake up every day and I can make several hundred feet of stone walls. and it doesn't, I don't have to mine anything. I don't have to, there's no peasants in servitude in the quarry mining rocks, and it doesn't take 50 years. It literally takes a minute. And I just can make these walls. And like, we live in a world, the D&D world, where magic doesn't make any sense because the magic would just be out of control. So maybe there's an attempt here to sort of right size or right balance this. So yeah. I thought player part of the Attack List's main agenda was roll, act under pressure. Some people take that school of thought. I mean, to be fair, one of the core agendas is to fill the characters' lives with excitement and danger. So, so maybe that's their way of doing that. What does Ian have to say here? Ian says, it's such a good cornerstone of the spirit of RPGs to have characters that change tier level as they change character level. Yeah, I mean, well, especially if you're playing sort of a very progressive progression-based RPG like D&D or like Fateforge here, where your character, there's a 0 to hero aspect of it. There are plenty of, if you were playing the Lord of the Rings RPG, right? Think about the movies, 3 movies, very long movies, by the way. I love them. Every holiday, I try to, I haven't done it as much the last couple of years, but every holiday I try to sit down and I try to watch all 3 extended editions. Because I love the movies, but I don't think I've watched them last year. Maybe it's been 2 years, but anyways, point is Aragorn at the start of Fellowship of the Ring is already probably like, I don't know, 8th, 9th, 10th level, right? Something in that neighborhood. Right. And they're fighting orcs, sometimes they fight Uruk-hai. So like if the orc is like a CR 1/2 and like the Moria goblin is like a CR 1/3 or 1/4, maybe the Uruk-hai is like a CR 1, right? And that's what they fight for like the entire campaign. And at the end of it, Aragorn has maybe gained a level or 2, but he isn't flying to space to fight, Morgoth. He's not 1v1ing. Actually, interestingly, this is me going off on a nerd tangent here. I apologize. There is a deleted scene. You can actually go out and find it. And there's a moment in the final battle of Return of the King where Aragorn, big troll, comes fighting through the melee when they're attacking the Morannon, the Black Gate, to cause a distraction to allow Sam and Frodo to get to Mount Doom. And there's a scene where this big troll comes in and it's, a fighting and beating down on Aragorn, and it looks like he's almost about to die. And then Frodo destroys the ring. Originally, if you've seen the movie enough times, it looks a little weird. Originally, that was supposed to be Sauron. In the original screenplay, and they did it, even the original footage, basically the eye of Sauron stares down and like a vision of Sauron appears. Not the mouth of Sauron. Sauron appears, and, he's fighting Aragorn and kicking his ass. That's why Aragorn is losing to this troll. And then, Frodo destroys the ring. But they got rid of it because they said, that's not what this game's about. That's not what this movie's about. Kyle, coming through, baby. Woo!
Kyle tipped $20. Speaking of beating metal, the Mistborn RPG does a pretty good job of putting Brandon's world into role-playing mechanics.
Is that out? I thought, isn't the Mistborn RPG coming out? I thought it wasn't out yet. Or is there like an early alpha? Or am I just clueless? Or is there already a Mistborn RPG? Am I thinking of something differently? I thought there was like a big Brandon Sanderson RPG that was supposed to be coming out. Maybe the Mistborn RPG is old. I remember Tim from the channel. Tim's a big, huge Brandon Sanderson fan. And I remember one Gen Con, he picked up a bunch of Mistborn RPGs. Oh, it's out. Okay. It's called the Mistborn RPG? Okay, yeah. Okay. I'm not a Sanderson fan, so I mean, I've read his Wheel of Time books. That's about it. Stormlight is coming out. That is different from Mistborn. Thank you. Yes, I'm looking at the Mistborn cover art now. Yes, I remember that Tim had picked this up. So, yeah, I mean, that is really cool. When you can take a interesting, because here's the thing, Sanderson, a lot of people like him for this reason. Even Wheel of Time, which he co-opted, has what we call an interesting system of magic. Even my favorite fantasy books, like Wizard of Earthsea, magic is difficult or rare or precious It's not just some commodity that you can just spew out. And so it's always interesting to see games where like that is the case, which I think is really interesting. But thank you, Kyle. That was very, very generous of you. All right. Anyways, point is, Aragorn, he wasn't about fighting, Sauron is a Maiar. It's a fallen angel. Basically, it's an angelic being. It's basically like a Solar turned evil. Aragorn isn't going to be able to fight that. And the story wasn't even about that. So that was kind of why they removed it, which is smart because it obviously was not in the book. But also it's just like, yeah, like they wanted to go kind of, the Avengers hadn't come out yet, but like they wanted to go action movie and they were like, no, that's not what this game is about. So if you played Lord of the Rings, your character is Aragorn. You started at level 8, you fought CR 1s and halves for most of the campaign. And then at the end you were like level 11. So it's very different in a normal game. All right. So this is very interesting. We got our magic. All right. We choose our ability scores. We got 6 of them as normal. Average of a person is 10 or 11. You can simulate this by rolling 3d6, but your hero is meant to be extraordinary. So roll 46 and keep the best 3. Now because this is 5th edition, I'm sure they don't actually mean this, but again, it's very strange that we roll our ability scores after we pick our class. I don't know if they do that on purpose or if they meant, yeah. It's kind of interesting. Again, I mean, obviously they're not saying like you roll 46 in order, but you might not want to be a character class if you don't have certain ability scores that you need. Interesting. Or you could do a point buy. All right. Sounds good. The leader can establish that extraordinary ability scores from 16 up to 20. And by the way, note this has the gritty symbol. That's what the blood drop means. Can only be reached by experienced heroes, and thus that players can only buy starting ability scores up to 15. Note that increases related to your character species can still take you above 16 or 17 at first level. So there you go. Like, no 18s, no 16s for you. Only 15s. So I kind of like that. I could feel where that's kind of more gritty. So then we talk about party, building a party. Here's Ted, our rogue. So I like that. I like that rule. Take note of their skills and technical abilities, describe them, and choose their alignment. So basically pretty much normal here. Good and evil, law and chaos. Your leader will tell you if choosing an alignment is optional or required. Okay, nice. You get gold to buy stuff. Sounds pretty normal. All right. So that is character creation. Pretty simple there. So then we get into this section here, which is about the Fateforge. This is integral to the mythology. Some say it is located within the magmatic depths of the world. Others say that it was built and hidden on the face of eternity. So there is a very entrenched world here. And one of the things I think that's really important to note, and I've seen this in several instances as we've been reading through, your character is special in this game. Whether you're awakened or not, the idea here is that you are part of some sort of you're meant for greater things, right? There's a destiny aspect to this. You're not just some commoner who picked up a sword, right? There's kind of that big hero energy, right? That is kind of coming out of this, because there's almost an idea of, if you read Wheel of Time, like Taverin. So I think that's kind of interesting. I'm not going to get too much into the mythology of the game because it's kind of a long read and mostly just text. But again, I do think it's really interesting. Yes. There we go. So you're called the Fate Chosen. This section covers possible ways that the people, so this is like the actual campaign structure of the game, how the people, the NPCs, behave towards the Fate Chosen. Those individuals who can take levels in character classes and obtain related powers. Basically, you, the adventurers. So there you go. I mean, when you're an adventurer, you aren't just some adventurer. You are a Fate Chosen. And if you are not chosen by fate, okay, you are not able to take, you're not taking class levels. And I like this because this reminds me of Earth Dawn. In Earth Dawn, your character, all characters are what are known as adepts. And adepts have the ability to weave magic. Even if you're a swordsman in Earth Dawn, you still are like a magical swordsman because you actually have the ability to what's called thread weaving and thread magic, and you can create threads into your character's pattern, which is kind of like your magical DNA, or kind of like it's almost like the magic version of the Matrix, and you can like insert new bits of code to like change who you are. Anyways, point is, in Earth Dawn, an adventurer, someone with character classes, isn't just, you know, Joe Schmo or Sally, whoever. They are, you know, they are special. They are an adept. They are a fate chosen. And here, so it talks about how the, you know, people might react to them. And remember the symbols, like this means our, you know, our action hero, big damn heroes. Those protected and assisted by the fate chosen will develop a deep admiration in time that grows into worship, given the gulf that separates a commoner from a 5th, 10th, or 15th level adventurer. For a common man, heroes above 15th level are nothing less than demigods, characters of legend that may one day climb the steps leading to the Fateforge itself. So, you know, you can have basically the standard D&D, oh, adventurers, you're so great, and you're so wonderful, and everybody loves you, and you're great heroes. Or we could go with the I think this was the dark, which is envy, right? As the chosen ones, the heroes to be, you are a minority. Those who haven't been chosen by eternity are the great majority of Eana's population and foster envy, if not outright hatred, towards those who have been given arbitrarily granted decisive advantages. Fun. This is more of a dark fantasy playstyle in a cruel, cynical world. And it's crazy how this is absolutely correct. But the moment you assume that adventurers are, and I know this is just 5th edition so far for most of what we've seen, but the moment you assume that adventurers aren't just people with swords or people who picked up a book and learned a couple spells or people that went to, you know, Sunday school and now they can command miracles, the moment you assume that they are something special, you then have to ask yourself, how do people react to that? You know, think about, you know, shows and books like Wheel of Time, right? Where for a lot of people, these people capable of working miracles, these channelers, are viewed with fear or hatred. So interesting. And again, you can see here, you know, maybe they're envy, maybe they're fear. So again, interesting. So we had a bunch of information about the city. The art style continues. Again, I'm a little bit ambivalent on it. I can't say if I love it. It is very pretty. I do like this little, I mean, look, there can be no doubt that this thing is just chock full of art. So it's a tough thing to do. There's a lot of debates going on right now. People like who are like, you know, indie game developers are like, I want to use AI art. And like a lot of people are like, don't do it. It's suicide. And I certainly respect the desire for that. And, you know, but when it comes to like making money off of something, I think you have to be a little bit careful with that. So I'm not saying this is AI art. This is from 2019. This is before the AI art boom happened. All right, so we get into our species. I'm not an expert by any stretch of the imagination in 5th edition, but these look fairly 5th edition-y. I don't think Dragonborn is even a race in 5th edition. So maybe we can go take a look at elves. What does this symbol mean? I don't remember what that symbol means. Does anybody remember? Oh, intrigue. Okay. Mystery, intrigue, dark, gritty, elusive. All right. So even the you know, like this is like elves are, you know, elves are weird and mysterious, right? Elves are whatever. Okay. Dragonborn is a 5th E core. Okay. So let's talk about this real quick. And by the way, even like this, the origin of the Dragonborn, this is part of the mystery. If you want to include this, it's kind of interesting how like it's a lot of these optional rules are almost more like flavor. So let's talk about the Dragonborn here real quick, because I want to say something. This is just in general my take on 5th edition. When you're Dragonborn in 5th edition, you get you start the game with a breath weapon and damage resistance, appropriate to your ancestry. And resistance is half damage. And if you're a red, or a gold dragon ancestry or brass, and your damage type is fire, when the party gets hit with a 20 damage fireball, and you go, I only take 10. Let me just tell you something. That feels awesome. I know that it's clunky and it can be problematic, but like there is something to be said about game feel. A lot of 5e mechanics feel. They might not be they may not be that interesting. Okay? They may not be that interesting, but they sure are fun. And they are evocative, and more importantly, they are oftentimes very, very effective. There's a lot of games that'll just nickel and dime you. It's like, oh, you take 2 less points of damage, from this attack. Pathfinder 2 is very famous for like giving you resistance equal to like half your level. So like when you're level 5, you take 2 less points of damage. Right. So if I got hit by a 30-point fireball, I would take 28 damage. Whereas if I had fire resistance, I would take 15. And the feel, the actual fun feel, the feel you have in your soul is very, very, very different with these things. Did I just praise 5e? I don't hate 5e. I never have. I just don't think that the game offers a lot of interesting things that really excite me. So that's why I mostly don't play it. Benjamin says, being a literal animated skeleton in Pathfinder 2nd Edition gives you +1 to saves versus poison and disease. And that's the kind of thing I'm talking about, Benjamin. I know that, dwarves have, here we go. Look at this. I mean, it's become a joke because in 3rd edition, dwarves got a +2 to their saving throw versus poison. So it wasn't even that high of a bonus. But like, it's just a thing in our game that basically we're like, oh yeah, dwarves are immune to poison. And then you read this and dwarves get advantage on saving throws against poison and take half damage against poison damage. That is mechanically in your face. That is going to do work. That is going to do an incredible amount of work. That is not some +1 bonus. It is crazy how powerful some of these things are in 5th edition. It just always, especially after playing, so many other games, like it always just surprises me to see these things. How powerful they are. Dwarven combat training. Remember, everybody's proficiency bonus, I think, in 5th edition is the same, right? So if you are a cleric or a wizard or a rogue, but you're a dwarf, boom, baby, you got battle axe. And you're going to be as good with that battle axe as the fighter is. Bearing in mind certain class features that might give you, but the actual attack bonus is basically going to be the same. That's kind of cool. I don't know. I like for effects to be big. I know a lot of people say 5th edition doesn't have a lot of choices. There's some truth to that. But at least the ones that you do make seem to have a very large impact. But yeah. Yeah, of course. Minus the stat, of course. But the other thing about it too, Isaiah, not to go off on a tangent here, but the math is fairly flat, right? The armor classes of these monsters, it doesn't go up by that much. And you might be fighting a bunch of Uruk-hai, right? You might be level 4 or 5 adventurers and you're fighting a bunch of CR1s. So, look at Gandalf. Think about Gandalf. Let's look at Gandalf. Gandalf in Lord of the Rings is a wizard. Now, yes, he's technically a Maiar, which is a angelic spirit, and he has come to Earth as the Ishtari to be a guardian of the people of the West. But outside of that, he's a wizard. He's an old man. He is in an old man's body. He's an old man. But look at Gandalf throughout the Lord of the Rings. When you see him at Helm's Deep, when you see him at the Siege of Gondor, when you see him at the Mines of Moria, what is he doing? He's fighting in melee. He's slashing people with Glamdring. He's bashing people with his staff, right? He is fighting these creatures because assuming, let's say he's, I don't know, level 7, level 8 wizard, and you're fighting a bunch of like CR1s and CR, whatever type monsters. Yeah, you can hit those creatures very easily and you could do a bunch of damage to those creatures. I find that to be much more compelling than the standard sort of model of the wizard is helpless and hopeless in melee. And it's for that reason that I like bounded accuracy. And let me tell you something. A lot of people say, well, no, like 5th edition has this thing where it's like, it's actually different than even 1st edition D&D or 2nd edition D&D. Because in 1st edition AD&D, armor classes did not, right? They weren't tied to level. So your armor class in full plate was like AC 0 with a shield. So equivalent to AC 20. And short of getting magical shields and magical armor, there wasn't really a whole lot that you could do to improve it. So your AC was fairly well capped out, 20, give or take. But a fighter in 1st edition and 2nd edition, their THAC0, which today we would just basically call bonus to hit, got better by 1 point every level. In 3rd edition, they just flipped this and called it base attack bonus, and a fighter went from +1 to +20 at level 20. Whereas in, 2nd edition, right, a fighter's THAC0 started at 19 or whatever and went down to 1. So it's the same thing. But that meant that the fighter actually got really, really good at attacking people, okay? To the point where the armor classes didn't improve, so the fighter was basically just like auto-hitting everything. In 5th edition is the first edition of the game where the armor classes don't really improve that much, and the progression on I don't know why they call it bounded accuracy, by the way, because you do get better. Proficiency goes from 2 to 6 or something, but it goes up, but only a little bit. So it's really interesting how that changes the dynamics of the game, because you're absolutely right, GM Scott. A 10th and level 10 Pathfinder 2 wizard could wreck some goblins in melee, though. You are correct, but there's one problem, GM Scott. If we're saying that these things are supposed to be interesting, right? When you watch the scene in the Mines of Moria, it's a movie. We understand that the Puros are going to win. But the idea is that the Fellowship, which consists of the future king of all men, an immortal elf, a highly skilled dwarven warrior coming from a long distinction of Durin's folk from the line of kings, the leader, the heir apparent to the stewardship of Gondor, a fucking angel given human form, and then 4 random hobbits. But the idea is that they're like concerned or scared that a bunch of goblins or orcs are rushing in and attacking them and fighting them. The only one who doesn't seem entirely too concerned is Legolas, because he is an elf and he probably wouldn't believe us. The thing is, if I threw, and I don't know the exact math, so people will correct me, but if I threw 10 goblins at a, or 15 or 20 goblins at a level 8, level 9 party in 5th edition, I think that they could legitimately be scary because they could hit and they could do damage. But in Pathfinder 2, I think they might miss on a nat 20. So the difference is in Pathfinder 2, yes, you could fight goblins, but there would never be any tension to it. So that's kind of the distinction there for me. Yeah, see, I kind of like that. I actually kind of like that. That is what I kind of like about the game. Anyways, moving on. Again, I'm not a big fan of numbers go burr. In fact, I think actually give it, real talk here. The progression of, correct me out there in YouTube land. In 5th edition, you start with proficiency bonus of 2. Let's say you start with a 16 in your strength score. So you have a +5 to hit. That's at level 1. And then let's say over the course of the game, you get your strength up to 20. No belts of storm giant strength or anything like that. You get your strength to 20. You have +6 proficiency. So what's that? +6, +5. So it's a +11, and maybe you have a +2 or +3 sword. Does that sound about right? So you end up with like a +13, +14 to hit at the very end of the game. And you started at a 5. 5, going from 5 to 13, I don't know. That feels like awesome to me. So I don't know. That to me seems like pretty cool. I really, really like that. Yeah, proficiency without level is very similar into 5th edition, basically. Yeah. So, is there a difference though? I mean, proficiency does go up. Well, proficiency goes up by 4 points. Your stat goes up by a little bit more, but more or less it's about the same. All right, moving on. So we've got dwarves, we've got elves, we've got gnomes, we've got halflings, we've got humans. And what's interesting, by the way, is in each of these race, you can see here that these are optional rules. Remember, this is part of the intrigue package, a short but intense life, right? So if you're a, half orc, they don't necessarily have to live short lives. It's a choice that you can make, Oh, we got Kefka laughing. Somebody must have super chatted. It's Rel. Hello, Rel. Would you have an interest in giving your take on another T20 system in an alpha dev? I am building one now and glean a lot from your design talks. Well, thank you, Rel. I usually don't take just unsolicited looks at stuff. I mean, unless it's something really simple, quick glance, just give you my sort of initial takes. That being said, there are times where people who have been members of the Patreon, if I have the opportunity to take a look at them, I will happily, give them some feedback. There have even been a couple of times where people have paid me a little bit of money, but I really don't like to do that. I'd rather just keep money out of it, and just kind of offer that as a service to people who are members of the Patreon. So, if it's something that, and plus too, I think you should take advantage of the community. I mean, I'm just one part of the Knights of Last Call value, right? The community, the people that have come and joined to become this community, their value outshines my own. So I would say that you should take advantage of both. So again, I really like that they kind of did this stuff here. All right. Background. Yep. You identify your concept. Okay. So I like this. I actually like this a little bit better because you know what it says? Just pick 2 skills that make sense. Like instead of giving us a list of endless backgrounds that just fill up the space. It goes, just identify your character's concept. This is almost like Fabula Ultima, right? Like identifying your character's theme or your character's identity. Then just choose 2 skills, choose 2 proficiencies, determine your belongings. Your feature is something that gives you a little bit of an edge. And then you can pick up 2 handicaps to gain a feat. So again, I like, they call it identity. Yeah, there you go. So like, I like the idea that you just kind of pick stuff up. Now they do give you some examples here. So it's not like there's not an infinite list, but it's not the kind of mechanical thing that we have in like Pathfinder 2 or 5th edition. I mean, honestly, again, I stand by this and say that 13th Age's process of backgrounds to me is still the most interesting and fun. But yeah. And again, we can see here some of these symbols, but, and then they give us a list of ready-made ones, which look just like the 5th edition ones, basically. And then for personality, we talk about alignment. So, inspiration. We know what inspiration does. Again, when I first saw 5th edition, I was like, wow, look at that. D&D finally has a narrative mechanic, right? If somebody role plays one of their personalities or they give in to a drawback prevented by a flaw or bond, you can award them inspiration. And then I learned during the D&D Next procedure that nobody plays with those, or D&D 1, sorry, that nobody plays. But here we go. Using inspiration here, if we're playing with action mode, we have other uses for inspiration. We can double our speed for a round. We can ignore exhaustion. We can remove a temporary mental condition, or we can re-roll a damage roll and keep the new results, even if it's lower. Yeah, because we want to make sure that people feel really horrible and awful. I'm asking something. Anybody out here who is a game designer, okay? Let me maybe ask. I'm telling you, if you ever end up writing something like this in your book, stop. Just don't do it. Don't do it. We don't need it. You don't need it. There's no way that there's any sort of balance or any sort of like rule, like just don't. Just don't. I don't know why people. Maybe that's, you know, people say, Derek, why aren't you a game designer? Maybe I'm not a game. Maybe I am not a game designer because I like to have fun. And maybe it is impossible to be like a real game designer if you actually enjoy the experience at the game table. Maybe that's just me. I don't know. But yeah, I mean, obviously you would roll with Dan Vantage, right? That is 100%. Dan Vantage. I don't know if other people call it this, but Dan Vantage is what we call when we were playing, for example, this is literally how I game design. Okay. We were playing 5th edition, but it was a super hack called Dungeon Time Extreme. And we were hacking in elements from 5 Torches Deep and a couple other things. Bob was a barbarian. Bob started raging. That's awesome. Resistance to all damage. Sweet. Bob came in. He attacked with his hammer or something like that. Rolled. And he rolled like a 1 or a 2 or something on his damage roll. And I go, oh, rage gives you something, doesn't it? And he goes, yeah, it gives me +2. And I went, man, that is just so shitty. And I go, all right, new rule. When you're raging, you get to roll with damn Vantage. And you get to roll damage twice and take the higher of the 2. Because I don't want to, I want the odds of you rolling double 1s to be extremely low, if not almost impossible. Because that's what we're here for, right? Just like, you know, I want to see somebody, and let me tell you something. I don't care. I don't really care. I didn't really care about the rules balance, because number one, let's be clear, that's a number that he could already technically roll. It's not actually adding any damage, right? It's adding damage in aggregate over the average. Yes, I understand that. But my point is, it doesn't change the maximum amount of damage that he could do. But more important to that, none of that mattered to me. What mattered to me was seeing my players' reaction. Again, for me, role-playing games are about the experience. It's about the feeling. And so I try to create rules and mechanics and home rules at my table that are, I almost never create a house rule or a home rule. Almost never to like fix some mechanical issue or, you know, whatever. I never try to do that. Almost every single one of my house rules exists because there is a disconnect between the feel of what something feels like it should be and what I want it to be, and what it is. If there is a disconnect between what everyone wants this to be and it's not that, then I change it. I'm trying to think of another example of that. Yeah, I may have changed it to like plus. I think I might have changed it to, oh man, I don't even remember what I changed it to. I definitely changed the damage bonus, you know? And Damien, I think, is right. That's kind of what I was making fun of before. Some of these rules are written by statisticians who don't take feel into account at all. And for me, feel is absolutely the most important thing at a game table. So, all right. Now, you know, this is also, again, we're going to go off on a side note here. But this is also where, when I play 5th, because I don't know how to describe this. When I play 5th edition, I don't respect the game. Okay, which isn't to say it's a bad game. It's just that I don't really care what's in this book. I don't really care what the rules are. I don't really care what balance is. And to be honest with you, I have run many campaigns of this, and I still do not know any of the XP rules or balance rules or encounter building rules for 5th edition. And I've been told they suck anyways. But what does that mean? Well, what it means is when I'm playing 5th edition, I play 5th edition because it's weird. You know, you're going to say, well, Derek, you could do this in any D&D. You could do this in 4th edition. You're right, I could. You could do this in Pathfinder 2. You're right, I could. But you know what? I don't. And you know why? Because I respect those games. Now, you might say, you know, well, that sounds like you're negging 5th edition. But no, right? I actually, in some ways, can have more fun with 5th edition because I'm not worried about the balance and breaking something and changing something. So let me give you an example. Somebody said Barbarian's the weakest class. Solana said that. When I was playing 5th edition D&D, I was playing D20, but I was playing it basically like D20 by the apocalypse. And there was no rules to this. There was no rhyme or reason for this. We would just be playing. An enemy would come up, swing at Bob, hit, right? Or swing at Bob, miss. And I would basically be like, oh, Bob, that basically like the guy totally, overextended. And Bob, go ahead and make a strength check or an athletics check and just like pick him up. And then it's like on your turn, throw him as a living missile into another group of, gnolls or something that are coming down the thing. Very much Conan the Barbarian, Conan the Destroyer type thing. Now, why did I do that? Because he's a barbarian. And that feels like what barbarians should be doing, right? I want barbarians, a gnoll charges in against you. His axe comes in, you clatter out of his face. Your other hand shoots out, grabs him by the throat. You lift him 2 feet off of the air. He's, thrashing around. You take his body, you hurl it back into the 3 or 4 gnolls that are rushing into the doorway. They go all down in a heap. You grab your broadsword and you start hacking through things. I want that feel from my role-playing games. That's the kind of excitement I want. Now, I don't care how we get there. Like, now it's like, oh, well, there needs to be the throat. You need to have the throat grab feat. And that's a 10th level feat. And it takes a reaction and you got to be able to have your reaction and use your throat grab feat. And then you can throat grab them, and then you have to make an athletics check and it has to beat their fort DC. And if it succeeds, okay, they're immobilized and they take persistent damage equal to your strength modifier. But if you want to throw them, there's another feat in the feat tree. That's a level 14 feat, which is called living missile. And then you can throw the person and you'll target them, but then you have to make a dexterity, but your dexterity is actually not that good. So you'll probably miss most of the time, but then you can throw them up to 5 feet away. And when they do, they take 1d4 damage or 1d6 damage. Like, that doesn't feel like, what I want. If you don't listen, I still have standards. That doesn't mean I don't have standards. So I like the idea of using other uses for inspiration. In fact, a recommendation I would make to anybody out there who is interested in sort of getting the training wheels going on your group. A lot of people I've seen come to like games like Fabula Ultima or Fate. Fabula Ultima, the table talk Japanese role-playing game system. But a lot of people who've come to it, I see they have a hard time with some of the declaring narrative truth stuff, right? Because you can use your Fabula points or your Fate points to make something up. And what I would encourage you to do is just start getting more loosey-goosey with inspiration in your 5e games. Or your hero points in Pathfinder 2. Just get people into the habit of like wanting to do something and then saying, yeah, I think you could do that with your inspiration or something. And then somebody might say, hey, do you think I could do this with my inspiration? And you go, yes, that sounds cool. Now, if you say no every time they ask to do something, you are training them to just sit down, shut up, follow the rules. But if you actually reward them for using their inspiration, then I think, what gets rewarded gets repeated. All right. Classes. No magic. We've discussed this before. And potentially no magic and random spells. So that is saying something. So we've already gone through this as a great deal. So here we go. We got a bunch of classes. The only new one I think is Scholar. I'm not familiar with that one. They do look like they get a lot of tool proficiencies. So that's cool. Seems pretty standard here. Here we have our Barbarian. Cool. And here we go. All right. Light, medium, shield, simple martial, rage, 2 rages up to 6 rages, rage damage, proficiency. This looks exactly like the 5th edition Barbarian, to my knowledge. So they didn't really change anything here in the class. Now, again, I'm not a Barbarian expert, but this looks like a but it's one of the classes that I actually have, run several times. So, let's see here. Rage. Yep. It looks pretty standard. Let me just tell you something, by the way. I know we've harped on this before. Getting just straight up resistance to bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing just feels so cool. Reckless attack is such a fun thing to do. This is a good example of like a very 4th edition inspired ability. 4th edition had characters that could like make melee attacks with their int modifier, right? There was a primal class, I think the Warden, who added their constitution bonus to their armor class. And it doesn't really make too much sense, right? But it's like, yeah, but it works well for the game and it seems like it's rewarding you. And it may not make sense if you start thinking about it in terms of like, verisimilitude, but it feels appropriate. And so there's a lot to like about this. All right. So that's our Barbarian. And then they've got different paths. They've got the Berserker path. Yeah. The Path of the Wizard Slayer. Okay. I don't know this one. Maybe this one wasn't in the player's handbook. Maybe this one is just for this game. But that's it. It looks like there's only 2 in this game. Interesting. So it doesn't look like they changed much in the classes. Now, Bard, I do know because I played a level 20 Bard. D8 Rapier, yes. Spellcasting, Bardic Inspiration. Love that. I love that ability, by the way. Bardic Inspiration. So cool. Cantrip spells. Yep, this pretty much looks like everything that I had in my game. Of course, you could start off as a bard and have no spellcasting. Would you at least have Bardic Inspiration? Let's take a look here. See, Bardic Inspiration doesn't have the awakened symbol. So even if your GM says, oh, no spellcasting for you, you could still do your Bardic Inspiration. Yeah, I like that. Let's see here. So nothing seems to be that dramatically different about these classes. So I think we're going to kind of skip through them. Scholar. I do want to take a look at this. Mysteries, discoveries, negotiators, observation, tides of magic, healers. D8 damage, or D8 hit points, light armor, dagger, quarterstaff. They know tricks. And they have trick points. And they have a bag of tricks. So they're not magical at all. Let's take a look at this class. Unless this is something that I don't know anything about. Let's see. At beginning of first level, you draw from your honed intellect and theoretical knowledge to perform astounding tricks through the expenditure of trick points. At first level, you have 4 trick points and earn more as you gain through the level. So we start with 4, but we end up with 20. You can never have more trick points than the number appropriate to your level. You regain all of them on a short or long rest. And at the first level, you know 3 tricks, swiftness and 2 others. You get an additional one at 5th, 9th, 11th, 15th, and 18th. I wonder if they do this. This is something I love in class design, by the way. I love, swiftness, and then you pick 2 more, and then you get an additional one at 5, 9, 11, 15, 18. You know what I love in game design? I love that you can just pick these. They're not limited by level, right? Like I could pick any of these at level 1. So I just think that design is really cool. Rather than saying, hey, here are your abilities. You just made a new character. You're really excited. Here's a bunch of abilities that are lame. Check out these abilities that you get at higher level. Those are the really cool ones. And that immediately sets you up to be like, okay, I guess I'm playing with the lame abilities. Also, that means that all I'm thinking about is when do I get to be higher level so that I can have those abilities. I just don't know that I like that kind of play pattern or reward pattern. I like having all the things available just from the start. Powered by the Apocalypse playbooks are very much like this. There's like a list of, 8 or 9 advancements that you can take, and you can just take any of them. Like there is no restriction on whether you can take one or not. So I really like that. Anyways, we get a bunch of these tricks. Brilliance. We can spend 2 trick points to add your proficiency bonus to your roll. If it already applies, double it up. Diversion. You can spend 3 trick points, 1 to 3, and roll that same number of d4s and subtract the sum from the roll of the targeted creature. That's pretty cool. Excellence. Spend between 1 to 3 trick points and roll that many d4s and add the result to an attack roll, a saving throw, or an ability check, or a damage roll. That's pretty cool. Fortitude. When you must make a saving throw that isn't intelligence, you can spend trick points to use your intelligence modifier. Gauging. 1 trick point, choose a creature. You get bonuses against it. Sweet. Getaway. You can spend 5 trick points to move up to your speed without provoking an attacks opportunity when you take damage or are subjected to a condition. So you can do this even when it is not your turn. And some other, there's a Moxie, Swiftness. Swiftness basically lets you take the rogue's bonus action, except it's, oh, that's neat. It's dash, help, or search. Help is the thing that gives somebody else advantage, right? That's pretty cool. As a bonus action. Alternatively, when you use the help action to aid a friendly creature, attacking creature, you can spend 1 trick point to extend the range of this action to 30 feet. You can also do this as a bonus action for a total of 2 trick points. Very cool. I like that. And then you get some abilities to create a zone. You are attuned to this zone. This is kind of strange. You can kind of get some investigator stuff going on here, I guess. I don't know. Interesting. All right. Kind of a weird class. I don't know what to think of this class. Actually, you know what it reminds me of? If anybody ever played 3rd edition and you played Dungeonscape, it reminds me of the Factotum class. There was a 3rd edition class, look it up, called the Factotum. And I think it was very similar to this. It might be. Could be. All right. So those are our classes, including the new one. We got some languages here. Of course, all, made for the game. Don't really care here. As we have a speech about exoticism. I thought I saw one. How the exotic languages sound. Interesting. Little pronunciation guides for how to sound demonic or speak in the Sylvan tongue. Appreciate it. Ooh, gritty rule. Reading and writing is basically not standard. Most people don't do it if you choose that rule. Multiclassing is pretty much multiclassing. Yep. All right. Multiclassing is multiclassing. There is no common tongue in this game, I don't think, making languages more important in this setting. I thought I saw something that said specifically it was the common tongue. Maybe there isn't one. Let's see here. The term common designates not a specific language, but the dominant language of the region where the adventurers begin. It is up to the leaders to define what this language is and to let the players know this as soon as possible. By default, all PCs speak common. Once they start traveling, it is likely they will journey to regions whose language they do not know. So there is common. It's just, your local region, not, if you travel to the other side of the world, they don't speak common either. Let's see here. Planning your next level, part of the intrigue. To become a wizard, you have to study magical arts. To become a monk, you have to learn to meditation. If you use this optional rule, you must let your GM know in advance of your plans for your character's next level. This will determine what your character will train for and what they will dedicate themselves to. Additionally, your GM will be able to make your projects part of the party's overall adventure in the form of dramatic events that will contribute to the atmosphere of the game, thus preventing the whole, I'm a wizard now. Well, wait, what? Well, just a little minor, not very crunchy though. Here are more stuff about multi-classing. Feats. I don't know the 5th edition feats that well. By the way, there's also an option on planning your feats. It can also apply to just like planning your level. You can plan you might be required to plan what feat you're planning on taking. I don't know the 5th edition feats that well, so you'll have to tell me if these are 5th edition feats or if these are new ones. Let's see. I don't see lucky. Oh, maybe I do. Maybe this is like their equivalent of lucky. This is kind of interesting. When push comes to shove, you can draw yourself to most outpost levels. You have 3 heroism points. You can spend them at any time. Whenever you make an ability check, saving throw, or attack roll, instead of rolling the d20, spend 1 heroism point to resolve the roll as if you had rolled a 12. Alternatively, cash in 2 of them to resolve it as if you had rolled a 15. At an additional cost of 1 heroism point, you can use either of these benefits after you have rolled the d20, thus replacing your initial roll. You can spend 2 heroism points to turn a successful hit into a critical hit. Oh shit, it's Derek hero points from Rise of the Rune Lords. Spend 1 heroism point to give disadvantage to all attacks to you for a round. 1 heroism point to double your speed. 1 heroism point to gain proficiency for a round. 1 heroism point to immediately spend 1 hit die and regain hit points, and spend 2. Here is my only problem with this feat. Why doesn't this have like the action symbol? This feels like this should only be available in an action-focused campaign. There's a lot of looks new stuff. Looks at a glance. There's a lot that looks new at a glance. Yes. Lucky equals the best feat. It's the feel-good feat when your dice are being assholes. Yeah, I mean, to the point where I don't think it's a compelling choice. I mean, certainly everybody in our party had lucky. Exactly, Claude. I like it. It gives you fun choices. What it doesn't say, you regain your experience heroism points when you finish a long rest. Okay, so there you go. You get those every day. I wasn't sure if you got those like every level or something. Like I could imagine if I was playing like an action focused game that I would just kind of give everybody this heroic feat. By the way, not to beat on a dead horse, by and large in 5th edition, choosing a feat does feel like a big deal. Like, I mean, lucky obviously is very powerful, and I'm sure people don't take these feats, but when we played 5th edition, Aaron and I really loved the feats that like basically kind of almost felt like they were giving you a subclass. Like Dungeon Delver is a feat where you get advantage to perception checks and investigation checks to detect secret doors. You have advantage on saving throws made to avoid or resist traps. You get resistance to damage dealt by traps, and you can search for traps at normal pace instead of having to move at a slow pace. And you get all of that for a single feat. And it feels like it's an entire like dungeon delving package that it sort of gives to you. So I really liked feats like Dungeon Delver, or I'm trying to think of another one here. Actor, maybe, even though most people probably aren't going to use that a whole lot, but Mage Slayer, right? Like I thought that those were really, really, really interesting because they just let you do the thing, which I really respected. All right. Whenever you take damage from a spell, you can recover a spell slot of a level equal to or below 1/10 of the damage taken. Okay. That's interesting. Fireball me. Why? Because I need to recharge. You can attune to 5 magical items instead of 3. Ooh, nice. My bard in 5th edition had 6 items attuned, I might want to say. How did you do that? Well, you see, I opened up my other 3 chakras and allowed myself to attune to multiple items. Why is that? Oh, because we were playing 5th edition, but we basically had Blades in the Dark style projects. It was something to do with all of our money that we got from dungeons and stuff. Okay, well. Seems like there's some interesting stuff here. I don't know if these are the only feats available. Are they still like 5th edition? I will say I don't like that about 5th edition. Yeah, whenever you can take an ASI, you get to take it. I gotta say, I don't like that. I don't think that is that. You shouldn't have to choose again. You shouldn't have to choose between what is probably the correct choice, which is boost your stats. Numbers matter, especially in a game where D20 rolls determine everything about your game. You don't want to roll low and miss, right? You want to give yourself every opportunity you can to pass checks, because not because you're like some car op horrible person, but because missing sucks. It's not fun. It's not interesting. Failing to progress the story, to do the thing that your character is supposedly good at doing, and then not doing it, that is a bad feeling. Which isn't to say that games shouldn't have consequences. They should, but I can understand why people just really just like focus on taking ability score improvements, unless it's one of the handful of extremely broken feats in 5th edition. That being said, a feat like heroism or harpooner, I don't know, or fast as lightning, or ghastly vigor, which lets you do this necro. I mean, this stuff is way cooler than just getting a +1 to an ability score, right? I would prefer that people had the ability to do these really cool things. That's what I want in my game. So I hate that they make you pick, and I hate that they make you choose between them. I don't like that system one bit. I don't like it at all. Not one bit. Cloud, we will see you later, buddy. Thanks for joining us. It's almost 9 o'clock, but we're going to keep going for a little bit here. All right, I'm going to skip part 2, the daily life, because this is all just fluffy bullshit stuff about lifestyle and trade. And I'm sure it's very interesting, and how much roll of gold, and looks like it's your standard 110, 100, 1000 conversion rate from copper, silver, gold, platinum. Although I like that they threw electrum back in there, which is nice. Again, talking about politics and coinage, and with an optional rule for your grittier game. And so on and so forth. But I do want to get to the game rules and see if there's anything here that we don't already know. All right. So we have ability checks, saving throws, and attack rolls. We make a roll. We add our modifier versus the DC. We can have advantage or disadvantage. Pretty standard stuff here. Optional rules for D20 rolls. This is from our action optional rules. If you want to make the action more dramatic and colorful, you can give additional effects to rolling a 1 or a 20. Here are 3 optional rules. Crit failures on a natural 1. I hate these. By the way, I hate fumbles. I really do. But here we have critical fumbles if we want to add them to the game. Tie break. Wait, what the hell is this? If you use this optional rule, any tie will become a struggle to gain the upper hand. This modifies the standard rule and may influence the balance of your game. This rule applies to all ties. So basically, if you perfectly hit their armor class. Oh, this is kind of interesting. The tied opponents secretly take note of how many hit points they are willing to sacrifice to prevail. They cannot bid 0. The bid and hit points represent the creature's survival instinct, vital energy, grit, and willpower. The bids are revealed and compared. The highest bid wins and spends the bid in points. The lowest bidder does not spend the bid and hit points. In the case of a tie, both bidders spend the bid and hit points, and a new bid takes place. The loss of hit points is immediately incorporated into the action. It's very interesting. It's kind of like a fun little mini game. But critical success on a nat 20. Oh, right. That's so weird to me that this only normally applies to attack rolls. I didn't even think that I wasn't even aware that wasn't a thing in 5th edition. That is so crazy. Oh, Isaiah would absolutely. So this is something that we talk about this a lot on this channel, right? We as Morrow says, interesting does not mean fun. Okay, those could be different things. Just because something's interesting doesn't make it fun. But another thing to consider, and I am guilty of this. Aaron is very guilty of this. I am very guilty of this. Sometimes we'll make something that is fun and it's even interesting. So it seems like a total win, right? But it can also slow down the game. It might make the game it might be more complex. It might involve more crunching. It might involve more mental processing or CPU. The juice has to be worth the squeeze, Exactly. If something's fun, that's great. Is it fun enough to justify the time? Maybe not. Ben says, this feels like a whole assortment of fluffy house rules for 5e. Mostly cool house rules, but do you really need to reprint the entire player's handbook? Ben, I'm going to go ahead and agree with you there. It does seem like it is mostly just a collection of house rules. I don't know why they felt necessary to literally reprint every single class in the game, even though they're pretty much exactly the class that is from the D&D 5e handbook. Maybe they were trying to go the Paizo route, and they said, hey, if we take 3rd edition D&D or 5th edition D&D and we just print it and pretty much make it exactly the same, but just tweak a couple things and then stick our big, cool, flavorful setting on top of it. And maybe they were hoping that they would become the next Pathfinder, but for 5e. Maybe. I don't know. Just guessing. So modifiers, these are exactly the same as we would expect to see. Proficiency bonus is the same. Advantages canceled. So not only are the classes, by the way, Benjamin, the rules are duplicated here. Non-level based difficulty classes. Oh, beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. Skills with different abilities. I like skills with different abilities, but let me tell you something. It doesn't really work. It doesn't really work for D&D. It's part of my problem with the D&D ability scores is like, I can imagine a world where it's like, oh, hey, I'm going to make that sort of acrobatics check with strength instead of dexterity. I think we could all imagine that, but this creates a false sense of a false dichotomy, because basically what it says is strength and dex can kind of be interposed for one another, and maybe and wisdom could be interposed with charisma occasionally. It doesn't really work that well. It works really well in a game like Dune, or it works really well in a game like Star Trek Adventures, or it really works really well in Legend of the Five Rings, and maybe even a little bit in Fabula Ultima. But I just don't. I like the idea of this rule. I just feel like it's wonky. It's wonky. It's not a really well implemented set of rules. I've seen this type of rule things forever, going back to 3rd edition D&D. I just feel like, number one, it just never comes up. And whenever somebody is asking to do it, it always feels like it's begging. Torchbearer calls this reaching, right? Where like somebody's like, well, you see, the acrobatics maneuver is really more of a strength-based maneuver. So I think I should really use my strength, right? And you feel like you're reaching. I actually don't know what the group check rule is for 5th edition, so let's take a look at it. A big thing I judge games on is, how does the group check rule work? Number one, does it have a group check rule? Number two, is it good? Okay, the GM might call for a group check. In such situation, the characters who are skilled at a particular task help cover those who aren't. Like it. I know this is probably just the 5th edition's group check rule. I just literally don't know it. To make a group ability check, everyone in the group makes the ability check. If at least half the group succeeds, the whole group fails. Otherwise, group fails. Oh, I love that. That's perfect. So my first impression is, this is just 5th edition. I with some like flavor stuff added to it. Now, some of the flavor, I will admit, is very compelling. And I mean, the biggest one being that very by default, like magic is not available to the PCs. You either have to roll on a random table, or you have to get to even start the game with magic. And that will create a very different tone. So there's tonal things, like the fact that the players are Fateforged, which means that they are special. The fact that you have to be awakened in order to use magical powers, not just, I took a dip in Warlock. I picked up a couple dips. I took a dip real quick into Pally. Like, that to me is horrific. Like, it's great if I'm playing, if I'm playing Magic the Gathering, right? That's the way that I would think about Magic the Gathering. I'm just going to splash this angel in my demon deck because I think it'll really fit, right? So, but most of the difference has been flavor. I like it. It creates a different experience, but mechanically it seems very, very simple. Talking about building a good cover party, I guess. Okay, so here's some strength check stuff. Here's some dex check stuff. Poor constitution. Con checks just never get used. Time, movement, simulationist stuff. I don't see any. I'm looking for the optional rules systems here. Here we go. Oh, here we go. Bunch of optional rules. Resting hardships. Implement these optional rules will make it harder for players to enjoy a long rest in the middle of an expedition. As a result, using limited powers, losing hit points, and accumulating levels of exhaustion will have more severe consequences. Making use of all three of these rules will tremendously increase the difficulty of adventurers. All right, safety. A long rest necessitates a safe, familiar environment, such as an inn room, the home of a friend willing to shelter or protect you. The leader adjudicates whether an environment is safe enough for a long rest. So this is something that Aaron almost always does in his games, 5e or not, is basically you can't just long rest by like sleeping on a rock or even sleeping in a tent. Like if you're on the road, you're on the road. You getting a long rest means a bed, a comfortable hot meal, safety, walls, right? A locked, door, a stout keep, something that you can legitimately feel like you are resting for. Aaron almost always does that. And he almost always uses, which I used in Dungeon Time Extreme. You could only long rest in town and it took a week. So it was kind of a combination things, which I know is an optional rule in the DMG, but specifically even camping in the woods for a week would not be a long rest. Recovery time. This optional rule sets the duration of a long rest to 1/5 of the time since the last long rest, with a minimum of 1 entire day and a maximum of 1 month. Okay. So if you went out into the woods and you went for 30 days, but remember in this optional rule, like you can't long rest just randomly. You have to be like in shelter. You will need to rest for 6 days to get the benefit of the long rest. So it's kind of similar to the same thing that I was talking about. Exactly. Aaron and I I kind of dig the Rivendell or the Lorien. I mean, if you want to think about Lord of the Rings, okay, the hobbits start the adventure. Okay. They leave town. They leave the Shire. They're pursued by the Riders in Black. They go to Bree. They're in an inn. That's not a long rest. The Nazgul are after them. And the innkeeper betrayed them, right? That's not a long rest. Then they're back into the wilds. Then they're making their way to Weathertop. You see that scene at Weathertop? They're cooking. They're eating some nice spicy potatoes or whatever. No, that's not a long rest. The Nazgul come up and attack them, and so on and so on. None of that is long rest. Then they go through all their adventures. The Nazgul finally attack them, and then finally they make it to Rivendell, and that is a long rest. And then we head south. Oh, the pass is being watched by the birds. Oh, we got to cross the mountain thing. Oh, we failed that skill challenge. We weren't able to cross the mountain. Now we got to go through the dungeon. So they go through Moria, and they're there for 3 days. Gandalf says it'll take them 3 days to get to the other side. Does that mean they took 3 long rests? No, that was all one adventure day. And then they get to Lorien after fighting a freaking Balrog, okay? And then when they're in Lorien, they finally get a long rest, right? So that style of play is very, more my style. Shadram is calling me out for talking shit on Butterbur. He's saying Bill Ferny betrayed them, not the innkeeper. You are correct, Shadram. You are correct. It was Bill Ferny. The Butterbur is set up like he is the bad guy, but he is not. You're right. It is Bill Ferny. Additional options for short rests. Using this rule without the aforementioned ones will favor an epic playstyle. By contrast, using it with the restrictions on long rests will give extra importance to short rests. You can take a maximum of 3 short rests per day. When you finish a short rest, you can regain a number of feature uses that normally only regain with a long rest. This is equal to your proficiency bonus. If you choose to regain spell slots, they cannot be of a higher level than your proficiency bonus. That is really interesting. So on a short rest, you get back, let's say your proficiency bonus is 3. So you could get back 3 uses of rage, or 3 spell slots, or 3 sorcery points. I like that. I think the short rest is a little underappealing. This, I'm not going to probably have time for it, but in Dungeon Time Extreme, I kind of had a similar system where some abilities, I use the opposite thing in Dungeon Time Extreme. Abilities and features of your class cost points. They cost resources. It wasn't like you have 3 rages per day. It was that raging cost a resilience point. And the next time that you raged, it cost 2 resilience points. And then the next time you raged, it costs 3 resilience points. Resilience points only came back after a long rest, back to town, spending a week in town. But if you took a short rest, which by the way was like a camp scene and you would spend like a night resting, your cost of raging would reset back to 1. Your resilience points that you had for your character didn't reset. So if you had spent 5 resilience points, when you woke up after your short rest, you were still down 5 resilience points. But now your rage had reset back to only costing 1 point, and then it would go to 2 points and 3 points or 4 points. And then if you took a short rest, it would reset back to costing 1 point. But the resilience, the actual resource that empowers the rage or other class features, would only reset back in town. And I had a similar resource called willpower. So resilience was the physical physical resource. Willpower was the mental resource. And so a lot of things, including spells, but also things like bardic inspiration, and things like that, all cost willpower. And again, it used a similar system where some abilities were like flat, like some abilities cost like 1, 1, 1, 2, 2, 2, 3, 3. Some abilities cost like 1, 2, 4, 8, 16, right? Things that are really powerful. There was even a couple that just cost flat, 2, 2, 2, 2, 2, 2, 2, 2, 2. It always cost 2. And so that gave me a lot of levers to sort of try to make things interesting and to create a sort of resource sub game within the framework. Basically, I was trying to take Powered by the Apocalypse and Dungeon World, and Torchbearer and D&D 5th edition and kind of jam them into one. So that is what Dungeon Time Extreme was. Anyways, very cool. So we got more optional rules here. Combat, bonus action. Incite is basically a taunt. It's basically kind of like Demoralize from Pathfinder 2. No big deal there. Oh, all sorts of information about attack rolls. I'm going to put a poll. I don't know how many people we still have because it's basically been 5th edition or 5th edition 2.0, but I'm going to put a poll in here. So here comes the poll. What do you think about D&D 5e framework / rules system? Hate it. It's meh. It's good. It's great. I am legitimately curious what people think about this. So another optional rule is choosing your victory at the conclusion of if you use this basically at the end of a fight. So this is good. This is for like the intrigue campaign. So this basically gets rid of the situation. Like it creates a situation where you can either let people flee or kill them. This optional rule details the possibilities available when you reduce your hit points to 0 hit points. You either kill them or you let them flee or you capture them. Interesting. So it's kind of an interesting way because I hate to say this, but like capturing foes is like really problematic. Not only is it awkward if like you end up having to like execute people, but it's also just it just takes up a ton of time. It just eats up a ton of time. I don't like my PCs to capture foes very often. At the same time, right, it doesn't feel right that everybody's just killing everybody all the time. I like this idea that when you, again, it's breaking with simulationism, right? Because we are like, oh, 0 hit points, you're dead. I like this idea that when a monster gets to 0 hit points, they're not dead, they're not unconscious. That's when they flee. Now the hit point really kind of represents their like morale point. Now, granted, in this option you get to choose, but I kind of like that idea. I think that's really interesting. Again, remember to get your poll in there if you haven't already done it. Although it's looking pretty solidly in favor of one or the other. Got some unconsciousness rules, temporary hit points. Oh, I'll give you another example. That's a great example of a rule that I ignore like all the time. Almost without question, if I'm playing a game like 5th edition D&D. Now, again, I haven't had the experience that all of you have. I'm sure what I'm about to say would probably, quote unquote, ruin the game and break it. I let temporary hit points stack if like they're coming from different sources. If I have a character who got a cleric buff that gave them temporary hit points, and then they have a cool class feature or magical item that also gives them temporary hit points, I don't want them to feel bad about having been buffed by their friend, the cleric. I hate that. I hate that idea. I just want, no, fuck it. They stack, you know, like you should have more temporary hit points. You got them twice. And guess what? You get to feel like a cool badass because you had your cool shield brooch of shielding and you had your cool cleric spell that gave you temporary hit points. I like that. I actually like that a lot. Let's see here. 5E's greatest strength is its mediocrity. I completely agree. And I understand that that is exactly why it is frustrating to some people, because they want more out of a game system. They just don't know. They sort of like, but it has to be D&D. So I'm frustrated with the system. They want more out of the game system. I completely agree with you, Isaiah. As I said before, you know, let me put it another way. When you have a really nice car, it can also be a little frustrating. Like if you buy a super nice BMW, right? Or something like a brand new Tesla. That's a great car. I'm not a car guy, but I'm led to believe those are great cars. But then you suddenly have this problem, right? Because now you're like, I really want to take care of it. And then you get you go to the parking lot and then you're like looking around. Are there any carts in the parking lot? And then you end up parking away from the store because you don't want to park near anybody so that nobody can ding you. And then you're like, oh, I got to take, I got to take it to the car wash because I want to maintain the quality of the body and, the paint job. And you basically are enjoying the car, but you're so worried about the car that it almost, you don't have fun with it. Versus, the Hyundai Elantra that you have, the Toyota, whatever, your Corolla, your Honda Civic, my Subaru Forester, that I'm like, look, this is just a ordinary ass car. I don't really care. I'm not going to actively go out of my way to scuff the paint. But if I come out of the grocery store and somebody has banged into my Subaru, I just go, I don't care. Right? I don't care. That's 5th edition's greatest strength. It's a Subaru Forester. It's a Honda Civic. You just don't care. And there's infinite places. There's infinite replacement parts. There's a million things that you could do with it. It's that's its greatest strength. Its greatest strength is its mediocrity. So I think Isaiah just nailed it there. I'm going to end the vote here. 65% of you said it is meh. 19% said it's good. 15% said you hate it. So pretty much even there on the good hate. And 0% said it's great. So nobody thought it was great. But 65% of people said it was meh. So decidedly our winner. I voted it's good, but there's a caveat. It's good as a base to build on. The game itself is meh because I like players to be able to make choices as they grow in level. And again, I am worried. I worry less about that. And I'll tell you why. Another 5th edition thing that I do all the time. In 5th edition, because I don't respect it, I do diegetic progression all the time. I do diegetic progression constantly when I play 5th edition, right? You know, you're in the dungeon and you're fighting in the heart of the demon and the temple of the demon lord, and then the ruby ray of the demon, you know, flares to life, and the beam shoots out at the wizard, and the wizard gets hit by it, but rolls a nat 20 on the fort save, and everyone's like, "Oh, that's freaking awesome!" And I'm like, "That is an awesome moment." And you know what? The wizard absorbs the power of the demon. Wizard! You now have resistance to fire, and your eyes burn like coals, and once a day, you can erupt into demon form, and we'll figure out some stats for you, but you become a flying badass with claws and wings and flame aura. And everyone's like, "Oh, that's fucking sweet!" See, that, I don't need feats. I don't need level-based progression. I have diegetic progression from somebody nat 20ing on a demon beam that now allows them to control their inner demon. Like, that is, for me, that's peak. But here's the thing. Again, I know it's back. I get it. It is flawed. I won't do that in a game like Pathfinder 2 because I respect it, because it's the very nice Tesla. It's the really nice BMW, you know? I won't do it. That's not a take. My players have taken a ton of foes captives and seem to enjoy interrogating and deciding their fate. Right. My group doesn't, and I don't either. That to me is tedious and boring, and I don't enjoy any of it. So, all right. Let's see here. Save versus. I prefer PF2E over 5E, but I have had fun with it. I mean, I will say this. I've been playing Pathfinder 2nd Edition for pretty much 4 years straight. I certainly wasn't playing 5th Edition for 4 years straight. I've played 5th Edition, and, you know, it's lasted, a couple months, 3 months, 4 months, 5 months. And then I'm like, And then, but again, after 4 years of playing Pathfinder 2, I'm also kind of in a place where I'm like, I'm really eager to try something, else for sure. Right. 5e, play it like you stole it, but not just your character. I mean, the whole damn game. Yeah, I like games that are pure diegetic progression. Yeah, I agree. For sure. I don't respect a rule set enough to not have fun. Well, Klaus, you are a better man than me. I have a weird thing. It's true. It's a me thing. It is a me thing where if a game is designed really well, and Pathfinder 2nd Edition is designed really well, I like respect it too much, and I won't do it. I don't know what it is. It is the way it is, Yes, GM it like you stole it. Exactly. Yeah, basically PF2, all the rules matter. 5e, none of the rules matter. I mean, I can tell you this. I don't know the rules to 5th edition, but I've run it many, many, many times. And to me, that's a perk. It's a benefit. I'm not held back by any of these concepts and knowledge. But the game balance is horrible. Great. Then I don't have to worry that I don't know what they are. Because see, if the rules were good, then I would feel like I would need to know them. And then if I bothered to learn them, then I would probably feel compelled, because they're apparently good, and because I spent the time to learn them, I should probably use them. And because the assumption is that the rules are good, then I'm assuming that my players are assuming that I'm going to use the rules, which means they're making actions and taking decisions based off of certain preconceived ideas about how the game is supposed to work. And because I believe in player agency, and player agency only exists when characters can make choices that are informed, I would be revoking their player agency if I chose to just randomly, arbitrarily throw out rules, which apparently were quite good. But if there are no rules and my players aren't expecting shit, then I can just do whatever I want, and I'm not crushing anyone's agency, and I'm not crushing anyone's fun. Mounted combat, underwater combat, healing hit points, exhaustion, nothing new here. Undergoing ordeals and overcoming pain. Your character is a hero, a chosen one blessed by the moon eternity. Should your GM decide to make use of some of these chapters' optional rules, the character's universe will be a violent, merciless one where arrogance and overconfidence can easily spell a cocky adventurer's doom. Oh. Overcoming exceptional ordeals is an opportunity to go beyond one's limits. Such scenes will create unique challenges and serve to grow your character. Yada, yada, yada. Below, you will find food for thought related to the context of a character in danger of death due to injury, sickness, or poison. The aim here is to make these in-between moments as narratively meaningful and gripping as the fiercest of fights. Okay. I don't understand what these are. Interesting. I guess they're just saying they're like narrative playbooks to run if somebody was like cursed or dying of a sickness or an injury. I don't know. This is kind of fluffy. It doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. All right, here we go. This is a new section. Wounds. This was an optional rules. Most of the damage adventurers takes are just bruises and superficial cuts. Wounds, however, are violent blows. Whenever you take a wound, you also take exhaustion. You have a wound threshold. Whenever you lose a number of hit points equal to or higher than your wound threshold, you take a wound. You know, it's funny. I've seen a lot of. I think this is really. I mean, I know what they're doing it for, but I think the design that they are using in is it Daggerheart? The wound threshold thing. Oh, that is so smart. That is so smart. Oh, that is so good. I think that Daggerheart system with the wound thresholds is actually really good. So let's see here. Let's see if anybody thinks this. Ben says, I get it. If I could tell the designers knew what they were doing, I'm going to think twice before overruling them. Exactly. You respect them. You're going to listen to them, right? Like, you're like, oh, I mean, they're probably trying to do something here. I like to hand out bonus feats for contextual situations. Same, except I don't like to hand out bonus feats. I like to completely make up random shit that you could never get in the game any other way, because that makes it feel special. That makes it feel unique because it is special and because it is unique. Kinda. I mean, that's obviously people really rebelled about it because of bad press and horrible misrepresentation. But my biggest problems with 4th edition were that I felt compelled to play by the rules of 4th edition because they were good. And at times I felt boxed in. I felt boxed in by that. And then there were times where I, kind of went outside of the box and I pushed the limits. And sure enough, the game, which is very, 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 strong, but it's very brittle. The cracks quickly show. And that careful balance, which has been so meticulously assembled, can fall apart faster than you think once you start really going outside of the established boundaries. Are there decompression rules? All right, hold on a sec here. Nope, it's just 5th edition. All right. Wound rules. All right, so a quarter of your maximum hit points rounded up, also known as a 4th edition healing surge. It's equal to the higher of 4 plus your con modifier or a quarter of your maximum hit points. So at low levels, it's going to be 4 plus your constitution modifier. And at higher levels, it's going to be a quarter of your hit points. So if you take more damage than that in a single blow, you take a wound, which also gives you a level of exhaustion. Determining the location of the wound is optional. It adds more negative effects to the wounds a character may incur. Whenever you take a wound, you roll a corresponding disability, whose effects can only be healed with time or through the use of magic. Roll 1d10. The exact nature of the wound is at the leader and player's discretion in accordance with the context. If the result rolled does not make sense, you can simply roll again or simply be winded, equivalent to the poison condition. In any case, the effect remains until you return to your HP maximum. So you can get hit in the face and be blinded. You can be hit in the back and paralyzed for D4 rounds. I'm not quite sure. I don't think that's how paralysis works, but okay. Basically, you get messed up. If left untreated, wounds can cause infections. Now I'm beginning to see why Ben really likes. Now I'm beginning to see why Ben likes this game. Wounds can cause infection that can also kill you. Even a properly dressed wound takes time to heal. So yeah, okay. Magic can heal a wound. For this purposes, the magic effect must heal hit points. Compare the amount of hit points equal to your wound threshold. If you are healed equal to or higher than your wound threshold, it removes a wound and the corresponding level of exhaustion. So, this is okay. Shadram says, is it possible Ben A got excited about these rules because he just hadn't read 5e and it's really 5e he's excited about? I don't know. That's fun. Isaiah says, I have no idea what this dagger heart wound threshold thing is. Okay, so, and again, I'm, take it with a grain of salt here. The way that it works is that, let me see if I can find a character, not a character sheet, a sheet, dagger heart character sheet. Do we got any good ones here? Let's see. Do we have any ones that are high quality? People are posting their shit potato character sheets on the internet, and I'm not here for it. Okay, nope, that's not good. Here we go. All right, let me open this here. Pardon my dust as I bring this up here. So if we, let's see. Here we go. Okay. So this is the dagger heart wound system. So if we look up here, right, you can see these are your wound thresholds. Okay. And your hit points are here in the boxes. And what ends up happening is damage is rolled. And if the damage is over 4 hit points, that is a minor point of minor attack. And then you take 1 hit point of damage. If it's 9 or more, it's a major hit and you take 2 boxes of damage. And if it's 14 or more, you mark 3. And what's really cool about this is it means that, number one, you don't have this problem of like instantly, like the most damage you could ever do to somebody in one hit blow is 3 damage. So like you can have these random damage rolls and that's fine, but it basically just gets like linked to either 1, 2, or 3. And so it just gives you a lot of ease of control. And it's also just a lot easier to track. Tracking all these hit points is like kind of a pain in the ass. It's just like, oh, roll the damage. How much was it? 20? Okay, boom, 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 mark 3. How much was the damage? 11? You don't have to do math. You don't have to subtract. You just kind of just go, cool. Oh, I took 5 damage, mark a box. Oh, I took, whatever damage, mark a box. And I think armor, I could be wrong here, but I'm not sure. I think armor increases these wound thresholds. So it's not like I think the math is kind of baked in. I could be wrong about that, but I'm not sure. But anyways, I really, really like this system. I thought it was good. Okay. All right. So we have disease rules. I think these are just Pathfinder. Okay. They're just their own custom diseases. Death. Oh, here's an option. If you get unconscious, it can last a lot longer. More sudden death rules if you want grittier game for people just to get killed. And then we have conditions. And then that's it. This is just 5th edition with some house rules. I think that's basically what it is. I think, and the house rules, some of the house rules are okay. Mostly it seemed like they're pretty gritty, I mean, I think the biggest thing that this thing was about was obviously this awakening and the whole, like, maybe mages aren't like magic obviously is not common in this game. Because if nobody can gain class levels except for fate-touched people, so fate-touched people are obviously very rare, and even then, you have to awaken to the magic, which could be random or maybe tied to something important in the game. Magic is going to be fairly rare in this world, realistically, but also rare potentially amongst the party members. So that alone, I think, creates a different feel than you get from your traditional sort of gonzo, over-the-top fantasy game that you get. And obviously, there's a lot of really cool, like, fluffy bullshit role-playing implications with some of these house rules. But by and large, I didn't feel like there was really a whole lot here. I'm really kind of curious as to what, as to why Ben thought this was so compelling. I really don't see where, I mean, Is it better than 5th edition? I don't even necessarily know. I mean, it's definitely not. So the answer, is this an answer to 5? No, because it is. It basically is 5e with a couple of house rules. I mean, compared to something like Advanced 5e or, Tales of the Valiant or whatever. I mean, this is like, or DC 20, right? This is like 5e clone. So again, I won't review a game without playing it, but it seems like it's 5th edition. So I imagine it would play out very similar to 5th edition. The world might be really interesting. So that's a big deal for a lot of people who really want to play in a really interesting world with a really interesting lore. They do have 4 of these books. It's pay what you want. There's a link to the drive-through RPG in our description. I recommend, if you are going to buy it, if you can, throw them a couple bucks, because why not? And so, yeah, I kind of agree with Benjamin here, whose take is it's a whole book about giving 5e DMs permission to tweak their game for a setting or genre. And I didn't really think about it that way, but that you are absolutely correct. And the reality is that is an issue for a lot of people. They feel like they can't do something like, oh, I don't allow mages in my game. And it's like, oh, my GM sucks. They're going to be on Reddit just like complaining and bitching about it because they're like, oh, my GM won't allow me to be a Sorkadin or a warlock paladin, whatever, And he's like, you said magic is rare. So I think that is really interesting. I want to see if I can pull something up here because we were talking about it earlier. Let me see. Here we go. Don't know where I put these things. Let me know if you have any comments or questions. I would love to answer them because I'm going to be signing off here shortly, and it'd be nice to. I won't be able to say. I won't see you till next week. So let me know what if anything is up there. Happy to answer your questions. Interesting. I don't know where I put these things. It's probably some horrible place. All right. Oh, that's why I called it. Okay. Save versus. Hey. Thank you so much. This feels like a 5e heartbreaker. We really wanted to make our own game, but we really like our house rules. Yeah, I think you're exactly right. And honestly, Save versus, I think that is part of the reason why I have always been hesitant to even before I ever even had a YouTube channel. Obviously, I've been playing D&D for a long time. I would always feel very hesitant to design a game. And again, respect to anybody out there who's doing it. You should do it. But like, the fact of the matter is, I know that it's fine to be inspired by other people. But I just look at a lot of systems and I go, I feel like I'm just taking, house rules or ideas from other games, and I'm just throwing them into one. And and again, I'm very self-critical about that, but I just feel like, and I'm just like, I don't think maybe that's cool. I just don't think that that's worth a whole new game. That's where I kind of get to it. So it is like a 5e heartbreaker. It really is like, hey, we had our cool world and we made some house rules so that like magic was rare and things were gritty and we had these wounds and like it creates a different play experience. And I think it absolutely would. And we had our own feats and we got rid of some of the busted lucky and we put in cool heroism. And I agree. I think that's a pretty cool feat. And it doesn't seem to have the same problem that lucky would have, but it doesn't feel like it needed to reprint 300 pages from the 5th edition book either. So I agree with you on that. So I found, hold on a sec here. I found my, found my character sheet. Here we go. So this is the character sheet that we did from for Dungeon Time Extreme. And basically, the way it works is you can see over here in the corner or the right-hand side. So this is where your spells or features would go. Like you might have Rage or Bardic Inspiration. That would be located there in the spells or features. Then the resource tells you which resource does it use. Does it use Resilience or does it use Willpower? Potentially, it could also use Supply. I don't think we ever came up with one that was Supply. And then the uses or cost, the little dots below them are dashes. And the dashes are where you would write in the cost. So for example, Rage might say 1, 2, 3, 4, right? So it might go like Rage might be like 1, and that's obviously a gigantic Rage. Reset essentials. There we go. So like Rage might be like 1. 1 and then 2 and then, so on and so forth, like down the line. And like, so you would write that in on your character sheet. And then as your character was playing, if you used Rage, you would fill in this circle. That just tells you how much the next cost is going to be. You actually tracked in this case, the resource for Rage would be, why is this thing so fucking huge? The resource for Rage would be like Resilience. And then you would know that whenever you use Rage, you would take, your max Resilience might be like 15, 14 or something. And so then you would track your Resilience here in this box, which is derived, by the way, from your Constitution. So, and then Willpower is derived from your Wisdom. So that basically the goal of the system is every stat is useful for every character. So every single stat basically leads to something that you need. Load, Resilience, Supply, Willpower, or Retainers. These are all resources. Dexterity was the only one that I didn't have a resource for, but that's just because Dexterity is so good and it just gives it to armor class. So that was kind of my premise of Dungeon Time Extreme. Anyways, so that was like the basic gist of it. I agree. I mean, eventually you do modify a rule set so hard it hardly resembles the original. Look, that some of my favorite games were basically designed that in that way. I just feel like there's something more pure, I don't know, about like coming in and saying, I have an idea for it. Like Matt Colville, I think he's obviously inspired by 4th edition. He's obviously inspired by, other games, video games even. But he is coming in, he's not trying to say I was trying to hack 5e and I accidentally made my own game. No, he is coming in with a statement of purpose. He is coming in with a blank slate with no baggage. If something's cool, we'll use it. If something's not cool, it goes. Sacred cows don't matter. Like I think that what he is doing, I think, is really, really interesting and cool. Like Pathfinder 2 is cool, but Pathfinder 2 had the legacy of Pathfinder 1, which had the legacy of being basically exactly 3rd edition D&D D20, right? But like, so I don't actually agree, Save. I don't think they did make it their own. I think there's a lot of things that are still in Pathfinder 2. Now, we'll see what Pathfinder 3 looks like, because Pathfinder 3 could be, in theory, it's separate from the OGL. So they could do whatever the hell they want. The only thing that they are beholden to now is their own customer base's unwillingness to give up on their sacred cows, whatever their sacred cows may be. Wizards need slots. I don't know. Maybe they don't. Maybe by the time we get to Pathfinder 3, the Paizo audience will have been like, no, you know what? We don't need wizards to have slots anymore. We don't need to have daily resources. It's okay if marshals can, do cool things too. I don't know. We'll see what it is. So I think that, I think Pathfinder 2 is still a victim of being part of that legacy of having to be designed a certain way, not because it makes the game better, not because it increases the fun, but because it had to be, because it's Pathfinder. It has to have these things. And I think there are plenty of situations in there where that is the case. Whereas if you're designing it like Matt Colville, where sure, of course you're inspired by other games, but you have a blank slate. You are not beholden to anything other than your own personal desires of what you want to see out of the play experience. I think that is tremendously exciting game design, but it's frightfully scary. It's a ton of work. You have to have a team. You have to iterate. I mean, rapid play testing, play test. Like, it's fine and dandy and all. I'm not knocking anybody on this. We're all keyboard warriors to some extent, where it's really easy to sit there and just type endlessly and create tons of pages of rules. But have you played it yet? Have you played it a dozen times? No? Then how do you know if any of this even works? And now you're so far invested into it that if you did play it and it didn't work, you might be like, oh, well, I'll make something else work, because you're not going to rewrite everything you ever wrote. So again, that idea of rapid prototyping and stuff, the way that they're doing it for Colville's game, I think it's just really smart. So yeah, I don't think Fateforge was what I was expecting. It definitely was not what I was expecting. Again, when I first heard about the game, I was shocked. I didn't know it was 5e. I just thought, I was like, Ben is interested in a fantasy style game, F20, but I didn't think it was literally just D&D 5e with some house rules. Again, take it or leave it. I don't think there's anything here that's going to revolutionize your game. That being said, maybe if you incorporating some of those ideas into your game is something that you feel like you wouldn't be able to do otherwise, go take a look. It's free. I recommend that you pay at least a couple bucks to support the creators. We do have a link in the description below. We do get about 2% of that. So not what I was expecting at all. Legitimately, there's going to be conversations with Ben. Like, what did we miss something? What did I miss? Maybe it's all in book 2. I don't know. I knew we weren't going to have a chance to get to there. So, my worry is that MCDM is trying to avoid try to roast so much that we gate name. Oh, very, very, very astute save. They're calling those things titles. I think that name is horrible. There was another name that they had for something that I thought was really bad. I was talking about it the other day. I don't remember, but I was like, that's not a good name. You're just trying to be different. Just stop. I mean, there is a, certain language that we should use, but I'm not saying that everything has to be called a feat for the end of time, because, you know what? The director is definitely one of them. That is definitely one of the things that I brought up. I was like, oh, come on. Plus, I don't like that term. I don't even know what term I prefer. I don't really like Dungeon Master. I like Dungeon Master. I don't like Game Master. Why? Because in the context of being a Dungeon Master, and by that I mean, like a dungeon master, I feel like that is what I am. I am there to bring the dungeon. I am the master of my dungeon, and that's my job. You are the player master. I am the dungeon master. But in a modern context where people are like, oh, I don't like the term dungeon master. Or game master is again too generic, and it doesn't really feel like what my role is at the game. But I also don't feel like I have that kind of narrative control. Bad guy coordinator is not bad. The BGC is not bad. I don't mind that one. Referee, keeper are definitely more kind of towards that old school type thing. I mean, it's really, I hate to say this. Because it's such a pretentiously douchebaggy term. But where is my copy? I have several of Apocalypse World. Apocalypse World calls the GM the MC, which stands for Master of Ceremonies, just like an MC, like at a show. So they are called the Master of Ceremonies, which is a horribly pretentious name. but it does kind of more feel like what my job is. I guess I kind of feel more like I am the host of the award show, right? And it's all about celebrating you, the stars who have decided to come out. And, I have to, do a little song and dance routine. I have to keep the show going. It's my job to keep things moving along, keep the energy level high. So I kind of like I like the idea of the term. I don't necessarily know that this is exactly the term. Ben, we just wrapped up, and long story short, what the hell, man? What the hell? It just seemed like it was 5th edition, Ben, with a couple of house rules and some like fairly potentially very important narrative, optional rules, but really just some house rules about whether or not people can play wizards or not. So I'm legitimately curious, what it is that you saw that just inspired you so much to talk about this game. And yes, we did only look at book 1, although book 2 is the Grimoire, so it's about the magic. And I'm not saying that the magic system might not be completely cool, but like I still find it hard to believe that would fundamentally change the 5th edition experience so compellingly. But that was the long and the short of it. Again, I'm not a review at all, because not only have I not read the book, I just flipped through it with you for the first time. I also have not read the second book. So, let's see here. Yeah. So, Rel, so I think you're right about that. So I guess what it comes down to is, and I worry, Rel, about this, because I've heard, again, I like about 75%, maybe 80% of what Matt puts out on his channel, like is running the game and stuff like that. Why don't I like all of it? Because about like 20 or 25% of the time, Matt gets dangerously close to the point of actually kind of almost outright basically being like, it's fine. If you need to fudge, just fudge. Your job is to create a exciting game. Actually, now that I think about it, that would be a good idea for it, right? That's Matt, right? Like I think he values the experience more than the importance or sanctity of the game, right? So I think that's where like there's a difference there for me. I do think it could be, I think being slavishly emboldened, like held to the game rules can be problematic too. But Matt, I think, takes a little bit too much of a cavalier attitude with it. And that is where I am worried that the game will be a little bit too like, just like it's the GM just literally calling the shots. So that's where I do worry actually about that. But Boothby, I do like that title for a game master as well. Ayla and Todd both liked my MCDM impression. Again, I watch a lot of his videos. I mean, I think he's smart. I think he gets it. I like his sources of inspiration, or my sources of inspiration, So I think it's a good thing. All right. So, everybody did great. We did show some love for D20. We got a little bit of support on I'm so over D20 and I'm moving on. Let me know in the comments below, so next week, I don't know if actually, right now the studio doesn't have power. I went up there today to print mailing labels so I could send out some t-shirts that people had ordered for the holidays. And I walk in and the entire place is black, pitch black. So I immediately call email my new owner, because then somebody else bought the studio. They bought the building that the studio is in. And guess what? They basically like, oh yeah, there was a problem with transferring the account. So like it looks like your power didn't get transferred over to the new owner. So they shut it off for lack of payment. Great. So I kind of bitched a little bit and then they fixed that. Also, I haven't even started to deal with this as well. I have a trailer, a 4-foot by 8-foot trailer that I kept up at the studio in the back parking lot. Again, under agreement with the original owners. And I didn't even think about it. I went up there today. It's gone. So either they got rid of it or sold it or junked it or something. They got rid of my trailer. And I'm like, what the hell? So yeah. this new ownership of the studio is being a problematic pain in my ass, to the point where it may have cost me a $1,000 trailer. So that's cool. Anyways, point is, there's no power at the studio, but there should be, hopefully, by next Tuesday. So next Tuesday, which is the 19th, we should be in the studio, me, Bob, and Aaron. Probably the last thing that we do before the... Hey, Ben coming in.
Bennett tipped $10. Sorry I missed the stream. Fateforge has a lot to offer, but yes, it's still 5e. That hasn't changed at all. We'll have to discuss in the Discord. Smile.
Yeah, there you go. And Ben doing a better job than I could ever possibly do. Thank you, Ben. Of basically plugging the Discord. So our Discord is private. It is only available to members of the Knights of Last Call Patreon. You could be a $3 member. We have $100 members. Why do we have a restriction? I'll tell you why. Because when you got skin in the game, it keeps assholes out. The asshole percentage of our Discord is extremely low. In fact, the biggest assholes arguably are like me and Smith. It's a place for disagreement. It's a place for mature conversation. We don't just allow anybody in. And if people are shitty, we ban them. So like, and I'll refund them their money. And I'll say, I don't want your money, and I don't want you to be part of my community. As a result, now that doesn't, we're not gatekeeping, because we have a lot of people who disagree with me even, and that's fine. But point is, the heart of the community is Discord, because that's where people get to go to talk and discuss things. So if you want to be part of understanding why Ben thinks that this is so compelling, you might want to take a look and join the Discord. There's a link in the description below, patreon.com/Knights of Last Call. Thank you, Ben. No, Beowulf. Them taking my trailer / cutting off my power, not cool at all. And I hope it gets resolved as well. But I have a feeling it will not be. So, I mean, I think only thing I could hope for, like what I might do is like, if they're like, oh, we didn't get that from the thing and we paid somebody to take it away or haul it away, I'm going to say, okay, well then I'm not paying my last month of rent, because my last month of rent will pretty much be about the cost of the trailer. So, get fucked. So, but yeah, so there you go. Jackal Torrent Moon says, let's go Knights. Let's go indeed. So, but yeah, we're going to wrap it up here. And again, we'll be back next week, Tuesday, hopefully in studio, me, Bob, and Aaron, just to talk about things. And then we're going to start getting into the holiday season. And of course, remember, we had a tip goal this week, which you guys knocked out of the park, which is fantastic. So the week of Christmas, so the 25th, the 26th, the 27th, the 28th, the 29th, I am going to stream every day. Well, not Christmas Day, although I might stream Christmas Day, actually. Maybe I'll stream Christmas Day night, because Christmas Day night really isn't anything for anybody, is it? I don't think so. So you've just spent the weekend with your horrible family and your horrible bastard kids who are they had no appreciation for all the hard work that you did for them. And they have no idea how much money you spent, and that they still are mad because they didn't get the iPad Pro. And you're like, man, everything sucks. And then, well, and you can come hang out with us at the end of your exhausting day, hopefully all tanked up on eggnog, which I might go and get me some eggnog before the holiday streams. There might, you know what, there might be some drinking goals, because again, I'm not going to be working and I'm not running, playing, doing anything. So just hanging out with you all, showing my appreciation to you all. Normally, like I said, we have like a holiday game, like we did last year. This year, just couldn't make it happen. So, anyways, that's going to do it for me. I will see you all next week, hopefully from the studio, assuming they didn't freaking, I don't know, they don't lock me out and sell all my gear too. Either way, I look forward to seeing you next time. And hopefully you can, hopefully you enjoyed this, and leave me a comment. Let me know, on the Patreon or on the comments. Let me know. We have a week of streams to do here, people. Let me know some of the stuff that we should talk about. What are the things that we should be focusing on? All right, everybody. Thanks so much for joining us, and we'll see you next time on Knights of Last Call. Bye, everybody.